Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у щах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Хто води всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.
Proszę idź
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 675 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again. And the snake has begun to eat itself. Russia has attacked their own city. What do you know?
And of course, we are going to be covering the past 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine, or more so, we're going to congratulate the Russians for winning the war against the Russians. Funnily enough, over the past 24 hours, the Russians have ended up attacking one of their own cities so massively that there are massive billows of smoke and fire coming from the middle of downtown in this city because of the intensity of it. I know, it sounds a little crazy. It really does. The Russians attacking their own city. Who the hell would believe that? And did the Russians...
I would, personally. They're so incompetent, I believe it.
I mean, you know, beyond the incompetence thing, though, Matthew, I mean, who would ever believe that? Attacking their own city to such a major degree, there's got to be some kind of really hardcore concrete proof that that actually happened, and you wouldn't believe it, Matthew. We actually have an official statement from the Russian government confirming they accidentally attacked their own city. So we're going to be covering all that tonight. All of it, from top to bottom, and everything that's been happening. Is going to require a little bit of a follow-through with yesterday's news, talking about how that ties into today. But I also want to tell y'all something really big behind the scenes. Some of y'all know that we did one gun review that's going live, and hopefully we'll be having a second one here on the P90 that'll also be going live very soon. It was supposed to come out this weekend, but I think we're going to have some editing difficulties with that. It might come out a little later. But today I decided to go out to to a range here in Alabama. It's one of the longest ranges that we can find publicly, and I ended up qualifying at 600 yards with an M4. So we might be trying to do some marksman videos in the future. I'll have to talk to some of the folks at this organization here to make sure we might be able to do something like that. But beyond that, really cool.
Not only did you qualify 600 yards, but you were graded by one of the most harsh graders I've ever heard of.
Yeah, the range officers of this place are a little bit, you know, I don't really want to be mean, but, you know, they're not necessarily the kindest people to be around. But, you know, it was pretty funny. It was pretty funny because I ended up qualifying. But anyways, moving on from that, I want to tell y'all about some big things that have been happening in Russia today. But that requires me really quickly to tell y'all a little bit about what happened yesterday. And so let me tell y'all what happened yesterday. The Russians launched the largest drone attack of the war's history by numbers yesterday, and it ended up causing a pretty decent amount of damage to Ukrainian cities, mostly in the civilian parts of the towns, or more so where there is no military infrastructure, so an attack on civilians. It appears that the Russians seem to have stepped over their boundaries a little bit, even for what the Ukrainians find to be somewhat acceptable, because the Ukrainians lashed right back at them with one of the largest drone attacks that the Ukrainians have ever launched onto Russian territory over the course of the entire war. And then the Russians did something I didn't expect. They actually started to try and shoot down the drones that are still coming in as of right now into Russia, and they're failing. From what we know, they're not really shooting down a large amount of them. I think the interception rate is something like 40%. And when I say a large amount, we're considering that the Ukrainians have like a 98% successful interception rate most times. The Russians appear to only be averaging around a 40% interception rate. Incredibly low. The majority of Ukraine's drones are actually making it to their targets. And not only that, the Russian air defense is ending up screwing up so badly that the missiles are actually flying right back down into the city and exploding in the middle of the streets. I'm not even kidding. The Ukrainians are targeting military infrastructure in the city of Belgorod. The Russians are targeting the middle of downtown, with where these failed SAMs and other kinds of air defense systems are landing their shots. And Belgorod, downtown Belgorod, looks like a war zone right now. Y'all would think I'm exaggerating. I'm about to show y'all a picture from downtown Belgorod, so let me make sure to show y'all this. And it should be loading. So these giant black pillars of smoke in the middle of central Belgorod are not from Ukrainian drones, from what we've been able to find. They're actually from failed Russian missiles, specifically of the S-400 variant, which are very large surface-to-air missiles that ended up missing the drones, and then they just ended up pile driving themselves into the middle of downtown in broad daylight and exploding in the middle of the streets. It's actually ended up killing Russian civilians as well. The Russian air defense has actually killed more Russian civilians, at least today, than the Ukrainians have killed accidentally over the entire war. But let me show you all the clip. When you see the pillars of smoke rising out of downtown, Yeah, hell, this almost looks like Bakhmut at the beginning of the Battle of Bakhmut last year.
Those dumb Russians.
It's just stupid. And before we even move on, because I know someone's going to be like, oh yeah, how do you know that that was the Russian air defense? Well, because the Russian air defense in the area, specifically the Ministry of Defense for Russia's telegram, said citizens have died because the air defense failed at their job and ended up having some friendly fire incidents on the civilian populace. That's what this telegram says right here, translated into English. And they're specifically talking about the Vampire surface-to-air missile system, which the Russians have been trying to use against these incoming drones. There was also a mention as well that S-400s were in the vicinity of the city, and they were the ones also having failures. But in this specific telegram, they're speaking about the Vampire air defense system. Overall, what we're getting from this is that the Russians have ended up committing probably one of the most grossly negligent acts of civilian casualties ever seen in the war so far on the Russian side. There's, from what we know, at least 6 dead Russian citizens that we've heard about, and the Ukrainians, from what we know, have only ended up killing around 3 to 4 Russian civilians through the entire 2 years of the war, at least officially. We don't know about what happened possibly with the RDK or the Freedom of Russia Legion when they crossed the border, considering that they're pro-Ukrainian forces that may be counted as, casualties of civilians of the Russians that can be attributed to the Ukrainians, but we don't know about that. All we know about is about the 3 to 4 people who were killed during the Kerch Bridge attacks on the Kerch Strait Bridge, and there was around 3 to 4 of them. That means that in one day, the Russians have ended up killing 1.5 times as many of their own citizens as the Ukrainians have, just through the sheer negligence of air defense forces surrounding the town of Belgorod. This is something that
it's weird because it's weird because it's like a war crime. But at the same time, is it a bad one?
It's a good question. It's like, is this really a war crime? I would have to say it probably isn't, because usually war crimes are acts committed against other citizenry and deliberately. This is something that was not really committed deliberately. This was more so through just raw incompetence from the air defense, but also showing off some more clips. So you see more smoke rising over the city in this clip as well. And, I mean, this one's a lot closer to downtown Belgorod, where the missiles actually landed after they failed. And I gotta tell y'all, it looks rough. I mean, those 2 smoke pillars look like they hit something pretty heavily. And we actually did get some video footage from inside of downtown Belgorod showing the explosion areas. And I think... Let's see, let me make sure. This isn't it. I just remembered. We couldn't put those onto the news bulletin because they were very graphic in nature, so I had to end up pulling them tonight because, I can't show people turned into hamburger meat here on the show, but it was pretty rough stuff. These missiles ended up hitting one of them in a parking lot near a strip mall at the bottom of an apartment building, and ended up visibly killing at least 2 people I could count on screen and injuring many others. But let me show you all the clip here. This is the sound of the Vampire surface-to-air missile exploding in the city, or an S-400, one or the other. Now, I do have to say really quickly that there's a couple of things audio-wise so we can pick up on to let us know that this was not a incoming Ukrainian drone. One, most of the time when the Ukrainians conduct drone attacks, we usually see, or hear more so, that they actually keep the engines running on the drone all the way up until impact, unlike the Shahed 136 drones that the Russians use, where they usually cut the engines and allow them to glide into the target because there is a chance of overspeed where the Shahed could rip itself apart if it goes too quickly. It appears that Ukrainian drones don't necessarily have that issue. So, one, we did not hear the sound of a drone engine coming in, so this is confirming that this was not a Ukrainian drone. Second, the explosion was very sudden. And considering that there was no noise of an incoming drone motor, and it was also a very sudden explosion, this is once again tying into the fact that it's most likely the failed SAM from the Vampire that has ended up landing into the middle of the city. We can also hear subsequent explosions in the background, which may possibly be more Russian air defense continuing to try and shoot down the Ukrainian drones and the explosions happening overhead. So all of this is tying together to give us a perfect picture that this is, in fact, a failed Russian SAM that was just caught on film. Russians said, what do we want for our city's alarm system sound? They said, hell, just put everything in. So they got the little bit of the EWS. They got the damn submarine dive alarm. They got everything going on. Sensory overload the audio file.
Someone somewhere in this place is going, is something going on outside? I can't tell.
Man, I'm telling you what, Bliet, something must be going on outside because every single noise that could ever be played in an emergency situation is playing right now. And moving on into our last clip, we also got to see that a Russian storage site in Belgorod was destroyed. And also, I just want y'all to note real quick that this is somewhere on the outskirts of Belgorod from what we were able to geolocate. You can hear the sound of the drone coming in.
Это пидораска. Вторая, уже третья.
Oh, goodness. Looks like things might be a little heated in there.
Так вот, подведем итоги вчерашнего налета. Камикадзе. Вот что у нас в итоге осталось. Куча металла. Сгоревший гараж. Машин у нас больше нету. Сгорело последние две машины.
See a couple of destroyed cars. Pretty destroyed little motor pool. They ain't gonna be swimming in this motor pool, I'll tell you that.
Man, swimming in a pool of motors. That actually sounds kind of nice.
Man, they swimming in a pool of flames up here in this one.
Oh.
Раз.
A little piece of something.
Вот оно, как оно летело.
Man, everybody getting a little bit of
Все,
something.
что прилетело. Насчитали 3 штуки. Чуть брикетиков осталось.
Now you can see him wandering back outside.
Это вот все понаходили.
You know, just some raw pieces of stuff lying around after the explosion. Now this looks like Gary, Indiana.
Oh, man. I like how this guy's recording the footage, too. Like he's going to send it to the insurance adjuster. Like, look at the damage. Will you cover this?
Can somebody help me? No. Geico will not help. Allstate will not help. They are not there. You are there, comrade. You fix the problem. But to summarize our major news of the night with this Russia incident, the Russian incident, I guess we're going to call it, this is probably going to be pushed under the rug. I know a lot of people are like, what? Someone's going to be held accountable. Heads will roll. Nah, that actually doesn't really happen a lot in Russia. In fact, throughout most of history, incompetence of a severe scale like this is usually ignored completely and never talked about again inside of the Russian Federation. It's a bad look, at least for the Russian public. Now, the rest of the world, we can all know about what happened, and, you know, that is what it is. And also, Matthew, when the world was up with Richard Parnell throwing in a super chat and it didn't show up in the live chat.
I see it. It must just be on your end.
Huh. That's weird because it showed up that one was thrown in at the top bar, but it wasn't showing up in the live chat for me. YouTube doing YouTube things. But it's still here. But nevertheless, moving on from that, it is important to note that things like these are never really corrected inside of Russia. We'll probably never see anyone even bring this up after this point. They'll just ignore it, and that will be that. There will probably be no lessons learned. There'll be no nothing learned, because some of y'all may know of this little town in the middle of nowhere. And let me go pull it up. Uchkuduk. There we go. Uchkuduk in Uzbekistan. Now, Uchkuduk is a little town in the middle of nowhere in Uzbekistan. It's literally just in the middle of the desert. And some people may know this because Uchkuduk is actually a famous song in the former Soviet Union, and even still today in a lot of the former Soviet republics, including Ukraine and Russia, about a town that had 3 water wells and was a respite against the hot desert heat of Uzbekistan. Now, Russian incompetence actually led to the deadliest air disaster in Soviet history, just happening a few miles away away from the city, and all passengers and pilots on board were killed in the crash, and there was something like 30 children on board. I think in total something like 120 people died. Out of that, nobody ever learned about it until the Soviet Union collapsed. Because for the next, I think it was like 3 or 4 years after that crash, until the Soviet Union collapsed, they literally just never brought it up. They had the investigators go out, they found out what happened, they saw everyone who was, the remains charred to a crisp, and the plane, scattered about an entire mile of ground, and then they went, hey, it would be kind of a smart idea to tell people not to get too fatigued, trying to fly planes and everything, but instead we're not going to say anything about it and just hope something like that doesn't happen again. Because what if the world heard that we had a plane crash like this? That would be terrible. They would think awfully of us, so it's better for us just to forget about it and not talk about it. And
then the Soviets got even worse at keeping secrets when they tried to conceal a whole nuclear reactor, blowing the lid off of it.
Cut the phone lines.
Stop the spread of misinformation.
Dude, but really, just to take a quick moment for y'all, because this is something that's a complete detach for all of us here watching this channel. All of y'all grew up, most of y'all did at least, some of y'all didn't, but a lot of y'all grew up here in the Western world where you hear about everything, and the news is always snooping for something to whine and complain about. Even if it's something minor, they will complain about it. And it's just bizarre to think about times like in the Soviet Union where people would just flat out lie about that kind of stuff. And even still to this day, the Russian Federation keeps that tradition alive of just flat out lying about stuff like this. And they probably will tell the Russian public, yeah, the air defense really didn't do their job. But on the other hand, that was Ukrainian drones attacking civilians in the middle of Belgorod. Although there's no proof to confirm that, and it more so proves... any of the proof that we have, it more so proves it was a failed SAM that ended up landing in the middle of Belgorod twice. So going off all this, there's not a pretty picture being painted for the Russians, and historically, we already have a pretty good idea of what they're going to do. Or if anyone's held accountable, it's probably going to be some very light slaps on the wrist. They'll probably remove the air defense commander from his position and probably put him somewhere near Vladivostok or something like that just for the hell of it. But nevertheless, a really bizarre occurrence. But what's even more bizarre inside of Russia is how they treat their wounded veterans. Now, whether you like the Russians or not, I think we can all kind of get behind the idea that if you fight for your nation, you should be entitled to some kind of financial compensation, or at least some kind of care after you're out of the armed forces. That's something that the Russians just don't believe in, simply. And we can see in this video here, a Russian soldier that lost his leg is ending up having to make his very own prosthetic because the Russians wouldn't even pay for him to have one, and he's making it out of a birch log. I'm not even making it up. It's literally just a log. I'll show y'all the clip. So we can see him carving out the soul.
This dude's got some extremely nice tools, by the way. This is Russia?
Yeah, this is Pasha in the workshop. I don't know where in the world they got a workshop like this, but it's kind of bizarre. This guy has a workshop that is probably more expensive than the prosthetic, and still at the same time, the Russian military just couldn't afford to get the guy a prosthetic.
This dude could have probably afforded one on his own with all the tools he's got in there, like high-end, tools of every type.
Yeah, really nice stuff. So he finally puts it on the birch log. Puts it on. And look at that. He finally got a prosthetic. But, cool and all, but why can't the Russian government provide him a simple prosthetic? I mean, the guy's literally going out and cutting down a birch tree and then making a simple foot out of the remainder of the timber he had left. And the Russians just can't buy this guy a simple prosthetic at all. I mean, prosthetics aren't that expensive. Prosthetics have been around since World War I in primitive forms. And the Russians can't even afford to get the guy that. He has to go make one on his own. And that's something very telling about the Russians, because just think about that. Really do think about that. We went over the payout that the Ukrainians give for a dead soldier, which is somewhere around $400,000 US. The US, including the insurance policy that U.S. soldiers take out, The next of kin would be provided $600,000 nearly in the present day if their family member died in action. This guy can't even get a prosthetic leg, which would cost at the cheapest probably around maybe 2,500 US dollars. He can't even get that from the Russian government. He got nothing. That is just pitiful when you think about it. And really, it just makes you question, why in the world are any Russians behind this war when their government won't even take care of the soldiers that are supposedly fighting this righteous and just war, according to them? They won't even take care of them. And that's pretty wild to think about, and I just want y'all to really let that sink in. It's at the front door. Let that sink in. But anyways, moving on from that and out of the Russian news, we did hear that apparently the Japanese may have approved a $1 billion support package, but sadly I don't have a news bulletin on that, and I'm going to look around a little bit more and probably put that into tomorrow's news because we weren't able to confirm that yet tonight. But down in the area of Odessa, we did get to see that the Russians, while not able to pay for prosthetics, are continuing to pay for a large amount of drones to try and conduct attacks on Ukrainian infrastructure. And it appears that they are failing, because we can see this Ukrainian patrol boat here passing by the remains of a Shahed 136 that's sitting in the middle of the water, completely failing its attack and not making it to its final objective. A very good sign, and great to see that the Ukrainian air defense is working as hard as possible to stop as many Russian drones from getting in as possible. We're now going to be moving on from that little bit of news and on into our location unknowns. And I want to make sure we get into these a little early tonight because we have a lot of them. So starting off with our first one, we got to see that a Russian tank apparently stuck the landing. This is the turret of a tank, now dismembered, and the turret took a flight. It went up into the sky and came down and literally skewed the barrel into the ground. The turret is stuck vertical.
What the hell?
What the hell? Pretty cool, I'm not gonna lie. I gotta say, you never see anything like that. That's like a 1 in a million turret toss right there. And just for the fact that it went vertical like this and it's stuck in the ground like that, I would give this turret toss a 10 out of 10, just for the fact that its landing is one we've never seen before. This is pretty damn cool. But with that...
That is cool. Bobby, that boy ain't right.
Bobby, that boy ain't right. And I gotta tell you, I don't know what it is, but my voice is feeling so strained lately. Like, I can hardly do voices or anything. But moving on from that and into our next bit of news, we also get to see that the Russians are trying to make an attempt to upgrade Scooby-Doo vans. Like, Zoink Scoop, I think this thing is not doing too good. Ruh-roh, Raggy. Like, I can't even do that anymore. I'm going to really have to let my voice recuperate. But they're putting cope cages on the Scooby-Doo vans. And we can see this right here. And also we can see a wounded Russian working on it because, just because. Probably because he's not making any money and the Russians didn't give him any benefits. But nevertheless, I don't really think this is going to help because, one, the Scooby-Doo van is kind of slow for what it is. Two, I mean, the drone could just fly under. There's no drone protection on the sides. You could just fly in from the side. It's only going to protect the roof. And, of course, there are many other sides to a van than just the roof. So, I have a feeling this isn't really going to help them out much. But, hey, best of luck to them. I'm sure it will work for maybe like 5 minutes or until the drone sees it. And then, that'll be then. But moving on from that little bit of location unknown news and on into our next one, we also heard from the British Ministry of Defense, much like we were seeing and reporting on this channel, that the Russians are starting to take a marked increase in losses. This is something that we've been talking about as we cover the day-to-day casualty report, and I gotta be honest with y'all, I don't know why the British Ministry of Defense really even puts out these reports. I want to always make sure to read them, though, because usually they are like no-brainer, well-duh kind of reports that usually come out nearly a week after we say something on stream, and we usually read these just for the fact that we want to make sure to show that our news is about as accurate or as reliable as it can be. That's a big thing to us, is always wanting to make sure that we are able to prove to y'all on our Trust Me Bros, that we are accurate and correct, especially with things like Frontline analysis or loss reports and things like that, because for some reason people never believe us outright. They always just believe us when we finally have a source. But moving on into what the British Ministry of Defense said, they said during the course of 2023, the average daily number of Russian casualties killed and wounded in Ukraine has risen by almost 300 per day compared to 2022. The increase in daily averages, as reported by Ukrainian authorities, almost certainly reflects the degradation of Russia's forces and its transition to a lower quality, high quantity mass army since the partial mobilization of reservists in September of 2022. It will likely take Russia 5 to 10 years to rebuild a cohort of highly trained and experienced military units. If casualties continue at the current rate through the next year, by 2025, Russia will have sustained over 500,000 personnel killed and wounded over the 3 years of war. This is compared to the Soviet Union's 70,000 casualties in the 9 years Soviet-Afghan War. And it appears that the British Ministry of Defense is once again corroborating the claims that we were making that the Russian losses are getting notably higher, and they are certainly starting to get higher near the latter part of this year, even compared to last year. We're seeing that 1,000 troops being killed per day, or at least an entire battalion wiped out or higher, is becoming a standard and a reality along the entirety of the front lines. And it's once again proving to us that the Russian forces are truly starting to suffer from the low training, high mass kinds of forces that they're starting to use. But moving on from that, and moving on into our next bit of location unknown news, and old Buzzer said that's the research that the Brits do, making sure. And it's good to make sure, but one thing is that some people only look for things like this, like the British Ministry of Defense reports. And the reason why I kind of gripe about them a little bit, and I don't mean, to just like dog them, because the British Ministry of Defense is a very competent and capable one, but a lot of people take that for what it is. And one thing I've noticed is that a lot of people are very lazy in their news reporting, and they usually don't try to use their brains at all when they try and report the news, not calling anyone out, but, there's a lot of them out there. And so they will then say what the British Ministry of Defense says like it's breaking news today, although that was an obvious thing nearly a week or 2 weeks ago before the report came out. I'm not really a big fan of lazy news reporting. I always put a lot of effort into what we do here on stream and making sure that our analysis and our news coverage is accurate and up to date, literally to the hour with our analysis and everything, so that way we're always ahead of the curve. If you're watching this channel and you listen to our news in a night, you will probably see that in 2 days' time, something we talked about tonight will finally make it to other news channels or other YouTube channels. We always want to make sure that we're ahead of the curve, because that's the big thing about this kind of reporting. Otherwise, why am I doing it? That's my mindset, and that's kind of the mindset I put on other YouTube channels that are so low effort. It's like, if you're putting in that little effort, what are you doing it for? You must be doing it just to collect a paycheck, because you're not putting any real effort into this, rather than trying to make sure to get clicks. That's how I look at it, and that's kind of why I'm always a little miffed a little bit with the British MOD reports, because people don't report anything until someone else does the legwork, and then they report it like it's brand new, instead of just doing the work themselves. But moving on from that and into our next little bit of news, we got to see a clip of a Ukrainian Su-27 in flight this month. And look at that thing go. Oh, good.
Look at it go. It's got a snout on it, I'm telling you.
Man.
And look at all this crap on the ground, by the way. Is that firewood?
Yeah, firewood or cut up trees or something. But wow, man, I got to tell you, it's crazy. When you really put this into scale, that thing from tip to toe is about as long as a B-17 Flying Fortress, and just look how fast it was going. I mean, what
it's
a
wild.
jet.
You don't expect fighters to be that big, until you see them on a scale next to other aircraft. They're actually massive.
Let's see if I can find Su-27 at an air show. Su-27 at air show, and see if I can find a tarmac picture, because I'd love to show y'all how big this thing is compared to other kinds of jets. Let's see here. So that's not going to be a good one. That's not going to be a good one either. Let's see here. Scrolling on through, there's got to be a picture where it's on the tarmac. Man, they don't like to put the Su-27 near other aircraft at air shows. That is apparently certain. Let's see here. Dang. Wait a minute. Here we go. Here's a good context. So, this is a picture of a Ukrainian Su-27 taxiing down a tarmac in front of a crowd of people. And the people are maybe 40 yards away from the jet. So this is a very good indicator of scale of how big the Su-27 really is. It's a mammoth plane. And I'm not really saying that to, tell you, oh, the thing's big and non-maneuverable. This thing is actually one of the most maneuverable fourth-generation aircraft there is. In fact, it is so maneuverable, it's able to pull off a stunt called the Pugachev Cobra, which is where the plane is able to flip itself full vertical and pretty much stop on a dime. It's really one of the few aircraft that can do that in the modern world, but these things are huge, and it really puts it into scale how big modern aircraft really are. And I love to always try and push this home. It's just a wild and bizarre thing to think about, because people always think that as time went on, the aircraft may have gotten smaller. You know, like these fighter aircraft like the Su-27 or the F-15 are obviously going to be smaller than a B-17 or a B-29, because people in their heads have this concept that those aircraft were the size of like an Airbus A380. But in reality, these things are behemoths in size, huge. And I think when you even put this into perspective against an Airbus A380, and let me make sure that I can get that Airbus A380 length. The Airbus A380 is, in feet, let's see here, 239.5 feet long. So if you were to take this thing, which is 71 feet long, and let me go divide that here. So we got 240, we'll round that up, 240 divided by 71. That means that this thing is a third of the length of an Airbus A380. That's how big this jet is. That's huge. I mean, like, that is massive of a jet. But nevertheless, just wanted to share that with y'all because it makes it even more impressive to watch this thing fly at nearly Mach speed on the deck. But moving on from that little bit of news and on into our next bit, we also got to see a Ukrainian Mi-24 taking off for a battlefield mission. We rarely ever get to see this anymore. The Ukrainian Mi-24s have kind of gone into the background. And also, this is a really cool one because it's an Mi-24P. And there it goes.
Also known as the Savage in GTA Online.
Man, you in that GTA, man. But what's cool
You gotta watch out, though. You gotta watch out, though, because the fighter jets and the Hydras and stuff, it's pretty vulnerable to all those aircraft.
That's true. I don't really know a lot about it, but I assume that's true. Now, Matthew, you know what's really weird about this version of the Mi-24 is that usually when people think of a helicopter, you always think of the ones that have the little gun below the fuselage that can actually be turned. It's in a turret, so you know you can fire it wherever you want. It doesn't have to be right in front of the helicopter. But with one like the Mi-24, the gun is actually mounted in a fixed position on the side of the fuselage, meaning that if you want to fire this gun at anything, you have to point the entire helicopter at exactly what you're firing at and then fire it, unlike the Apache where you can rotate the turret and look in an opposite direction of where the helicopter is flying, which is a really bizarre thing of one of the most common Mi-24 variants that was used in the Soviet Union and Ukraine and Russia to this day. But a really weird feature. And also, this gun is mean sounding. I think it's a Gush gun that was pretty much mounted sideways on the Mi-24, but it does sound pretty mean when it fires. But you can rarely ever find footage of it.
And also on the Apache, like the gun at the bottom, the machine gun, that's guided by the eyesight or the view of the pilot, right? So when he turns his head left or right, the helmet tracks the direction and it turns the gun at the same time.
I think so. I actually think that it's guided by the gunner who sits at the very front of the helicopter. So I think the gunner position is here. The pilot position is back here. Actually, you know what? I'm not exactly sure on that. I know we probably have an Apache pilot here. Tell us what the crew orientation is. Is the gunner in the front part of the cockpit, or is he in the rear? Because it would probably make more sense from a weaponry perspective to probably have the gunner at the front of the cockpit and the pilot in the back, because it's probably better for the gunner to have more visibility. But at the same time, I'm pretty sure that the camera could do that job and the gunner might be in the back. So hopefully we can get an answer to that here in a second. But from what I understand, the helmet in the AH-64 is tied into the gunner. And let's see here. Seeing some people coming in with some answers for that. But the gunner will be able to guide the gun based off of where he's looking. So if he looks left, that's where the gun looks. But he can also guide it, I think, through some kind of a toggle or a joystick in the cockpit, so that way he doesn't have to look at the target, but he can look through the camera systems that are set up in his position. And the gunner is up front. Okay, good. I was right. The gunner is the guy in the forward position of the cockpit. He's able to either use a computer screen or he's able to look directly at what he wants to fire at, and then the turret will track where his eyesight is.
Interesting. That's very interesting to know. Because I've seen a video of that, like the helmet tracking stuff. Like their helmets are super advanced on these Apaches, and I know what the Ukrainians want them to, because these things seem very capable for like attack helicopters.
And they really are. But one thing's important: there's a huge difference in between this Apache and another one. This one would actually die pretty easy. Well, get shot down pretty easily over the skies of Ukraine right now, because this is an AH-64D without the longbow radar. This says right here that it's an AH-64D, but it does not have the longbow radar attachment. So let me go and find y'all a picture of that. Because it's very important to know this, because this is a huge change in warfare. This giant dome on top of the rotor blades is actually an air-to-ground radar. And this allows for the helicopter to remain below the tree line, but this thing will stick out over the top, where the Apache can actually use the air-to-ground radar to pick up targets that are, I think it can pick up targets that are like 12 miles away, I think at the max. And then you can fire Hellfires or whatever you want at them, because it will also do the calculations in the ballistic computer for unguided rockets as well, and what kind of angle the helicopter would need to be able to fire off those rockets and hit that target. So this right here, the longbow radar on top of the helicopter, is an incredibly important improvement in the modern day, especially in helicopter warfare. The Russians did try and imitate this to a degree with the Ka-52, but it was an abysmal failure. And here's why. The air-to-ground radar in the Apache works because it's on top of the rotor blades, and because of that, you can keep the entire helicopter out of line of sight while allowing the radar to see the targets in front of it. With the Ka-52, the air-to-ground radar is actually installed in the forward nose cone of the helicopter, meaning that this helicopter still has to be completely visible to the enemy for this air-to-ground radar to work at all, and then at that point, it's doctrinally useless, because you're not mitigating the kind of danger that the aircrew or the helicopter is in, because it's still conducting pretty much the exact same strategies and tactics it was when it was a Ka-50 and it did not have an air-to-ground radar in the nose cone. And this was the predecessor to the Ka-52, by the way. This is the Ka-50 Akula. It went into Soviet service, I think, around 1986 or so. It was right near the fall of the Soviet Union. It wasn't really used a lot. They used it in the first Chechen War, and then they found out they had a winner, and then that's when they upgraded it into the Ka-52 that has 2 pilots, the air-to-ground radar, all that show business. But at the same time, it doesn't really do a lot to actually improve what it can do. But it does make the helicopter a little easier to operate, because before they had the second guy, who's the gunner in this helicopter, the pilot in the Ka-50 had to operate all of the gunnery equipment and also fly the helicopter at the same time, which is what they say was the massive drawback of this helicopter, because they said it was practically impossible for the pilot to do everything. So either he was flying the helicopter, or he was operating the gunnery equipment, but he couldn't do both. But anyways, moving on.
You know who really made the best attack helicopter are the Iranians. They made the best one, like that pitiful looking thing. I was about to say something else about it, but I'll withhold. Let's see it. I got to see it again.
Man, what in the world got us down this rabbit hole? Like, we were just rabbit holing on helicopters, but here we go, the Shahed 285.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's top-notch design and engineering right there, I'm telling you. They called it a Shahed, actually, not a you-know-what.
Oh, dude, this thing is hideous. And also, this thing is based off of the Bell 206, which I honestly think looks better. Why not just equip the rocket pods onto this thing as it was, instead of...
Wait a minute. So they put body paneling over this Bell helicopter, and it created that other thing?
Well, what they really did is that they pretty much ripped the entire fuselage from the tail section forward off, and then pretty much rebuilt it from the ground up into this.
Well, damn. That's like, I've never seen anybody make a design look like 100 times worse. The Iranians were brilliant at that, because they ruined it.
Dude, this thing looks like absolute dog dookie, man. Like, you couldn't make this thing look worse if you wanted. And I bet you it doesn't even add to, like, the mobility or the maneuverability or anything. It just was to try and make it look like an attack helicopter, and I think they failed at that miserably. Because it just really looks
and
like
also, why call it the Shahed, by the way? Why is everything called a Shahed that comes out of Iran?
Let's see. What? Let me go pull that up. What does Shahed mean? Let's see. It means, apparently it's Shahid or Shahid, but it means witness.
Oh, witness this ugliness. Witness this ugly design. Take a look. Oh my god. Even Mom Turn's asking for a warning next time. Just said, warn us before you show that filth.
I wish I could have. I'm so sorry to everyone who's watching right now. I wish I could have warned you about this, because this thing truly is ugly. Only a mother could love this thing, and sadly, it's motherless. But moving on from that, and on into our next bits of news, outside of the helicopter rabbit hole, it's time for us to move on into our casualty report for the past 24 hours. And we have seen that the casualties have been somewhat on up there. 6 Bobcat skid steers.
6 Bobcats, and that same guys over there saying lies in the comments section. Now, you gotta love it. The bots are consistent.
Man, I gotta tell you, I love to see it. 6 Bobcat skid steers destroyed. The bots are still at it, and then there's still people saying, "Now show true Ukrainian losses." and I don't think they get it. I don't think the Ukrainians want to show those kinds of losses at all. But anyways, moving on from that, we also got to see that they took out 750 Russian troops, 20 armored personnel carriers, 29 supply trucks, 16 main battle tanks, 17 artillery pieces, 15 drones, 1 MLRS, 88 cruise missiles. Not bad. 1 anti-aircraft system, and then the 6 Bobcat skid steers. But circling back to this 88 cruise missiles number, that was pretty damn high. And it looks like the Ukrainians did pretty well in the air defense. Not bad at all. That's nearly 100, only 12 away. And I bet you the Ukrainians are high-fiving each other because that was a lot of potential damage that they ended up destroying before it could make it to their target. But moving on from that little bit of news here in the casualty report and on out of our location unknowns and towards our frontline news, it's time for us to make it on in to our, frontline reports, really, from all the way up in the area around Drovchina and all the way down into the direction of Kherson, because we actually got a little bit of news down there today. But before we do, I want to make sure that we get to speak a little bit about what happened in Belgorod, because there has been some serious events that have been happening with Russian air defense and Russian missile works lately. A Russian missile flew into Polish airspace yesterday. The Russians are ending up hitting their own city with their own missiles today. Things are going very badly for the Russians in that kind of a category. And a lot of y'all have been speaking about that and throwing in your inputs on what y'all think this means for the Russians going forward. Matthew, what have people been talking about?
All right, let's go ahead and jump into that one poll that we have. And the question says, Poland has launched a search operation to look for the Russian missile. And what are your thoughts on that? 39% said that that's serious, but it will be overlooked eventually. 29% said the intrusion is extremely serious. 19% said it's not serious if they can't find the missile. And 12% said unsure. And to me, I'm just thankful that apparently it didn't hit civilians. That's the first good news. And I will say that I think that this might be overlooked for this reason. The attack was so major that was launched, so many missiles flying around, that even though obviously it's not good that it happened, it's not totally unreasonable to think that an accident might have occurred during that attack and maybe straight off into Poland. So, it's not something I think that was necessarily intentional, because that would have carried some very bad consequences with it if it was intentional. I think it was more likely incompetence or an accident that led to that. So I doubt anyone's willing to go to world war over that. But if it was intentional, it would be a whole nother story. But I'm with the 39%. It's serious, but I think it'll be overlooked. And it's even worse because the Polish can't even find the missile at this point. They don't even know where it's at. That's why they have people scouring the ground looking for it. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say they're probably going to overlook it as well. I don't think that they're going to make a serious incident about this. Once again, no one was killed, so that's really what NATO governments seem to care about the most at this point. And considering that nobody was killed, they're probably not going to be making that big of a issue about this thing. Also considering they can't even find it either. So with that, I hope that does address that well. And I think we're about to be moving on into our question segment. And I gotta give a quick thanks to everyone who is supporting the channel. And of course, if you do enjoy, you can always support the channel with a super chat, which is the only way we can keep this thing rolling. But with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so moving right into our super chat segment real quick, let me copy and paste one thing into the spreadsheet. And our first one is going to go to Duncan VR. There's an $830 donation. And thank you very much, Duncan, for that very generous support as always. And he says, Ba Muba, 1800, no respect, Baba. As for Kermit, the Cummy Frog, moo woof quack. Can Russia blow up their own navy too? And Baruf, ant noise. Oh man, I'm telling you. I said Bobby noise. Zong zong. Kermit for the burger fund. Meow, quack, baba, moo, moo.
And, geschlägt mein Leitmann in the deutsche Volk, but still, thank you so much for the support, Duncan VR. And thank you for helping this channel to keep on running. I would do animal noises tonight, but sadly, my voice is really strained at the moment. I've been talking a lot off air over the past few days, especially on all the stressful topics of the evening, as you all know. So sadly, I think it would be stretching it to do voices. But nevertheless, I do thank you so much, Duncan VR, for that support and helping us keep this thing running and throwing in the animal noises. Because while I can imitate them and get in on the fun tonight, it is always fun to have you here and throwing in animal noises like that, because it wouldn't be an LSA stream without something like that. It really wouldn't. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that the best I possibly can. And of course, it is folks like you who help this channel to keep on running. And so with that, thank you so much. And we are on to the next one.
And I'll be honest, I kind of like the calm, strained voice better. I think it's actually better. I don't know how the audience feels about it, but to me, I think it's pretty good.
Well, hey, I like to hear that. I like to hear that. And of course, if y'all like it, let me know. Let me know. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next super chat is going to go to Richard Parnell, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Richard, as well, for that support. He says, quote unquote, if freedom of speech is taken away, then dumb and silent we may be led like sheep to the slaughter, end quote, from George Washington. The LSA are not sheep, and its members will not be silent. And thank you, Andrew and Matt, and long live the LSA.
Hey, and thank you so much, Richard Parnell, for the massive support and helping the channel to keep running. And also, I would have to agree with that statement. I would say that the Lee Spring Army is certainly not a bunch of sheep, and I've got to thank every single one of y'all for not being silent and helping us to keep this thing running. YouTube is not really a big fan of this channel anymore. We've certainly learned that over the past few weeks and few months, especially since we started to cover the conflict in the Middle East. They really haven't liked us since then. But all of y'all who continue to support this channel and help us to keep this thing rolling, y'all have made it possible for us to make sure that this channel is not silenced and able to keep running. It's always very important to bring that up because as time has gone on, it has become a little bit tougher to answer the question of, is this channel going to be able to run forever? Of course, because, it's not being pushed to as many people as it was before. It's not even being pushed to all of our subscribers. And not only that, while our fundraisers are doing incredibly well, support for the channel, it's getting into some tough places where we're starting to, be a little bit concerned. But nevertheless, I do thank you so much once again for enjoying this channel and enjoying the amazing community that surrounds it. And also, thank you so much once again for being a massive member and an old guard of the Lee Spring Army and helping us to keep this thing running. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And of course, long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army never dies. And with that, we are on to the final question of this segment.
And the final question in the segment goes to Flash1, who puts in a $20 donation, and thank you, Flash, as well, for also throwing in that very generous support, and also for being a long-time channel viewer as well, like we always say. And Flash says, all the best to everyone for the new year, and let's hope Ukraine can have a good year, and please take a live chat question.
And thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And also, let me make sure, Matthew, I am on the right one. It is Ian Frogfish, is correct?
This is Flash1.
Why in the world did I hear Ian Frogfish? But nevertheless, I do thank you so much for the support, Flash1, and all the best to everyone who's about to be going into the new year. For us, that's going to be, New Year's Eve is tomorrow, and we're currently having a little bit of a debate as to whether we're going to be running a stream tomorrow night on New Year's Eve, and we're probably leaning more towards probably not. It is a Sunday fundraiser, and we have... I don't think we've ever missed a Sunday fundraiser except for once, and that's when I came down with the plague. But we are very concerned that probably no one's going to be here because everyone's going to be out celebrating New Year's Eve. So we are kind of, going to be considering that through the stream and trying to come up with a final answer and decision on that. Because I would not like to miss a Sunday fundraiser, but at the same time, I have a feeling nobody's going to show up for a Sunday fundraiser. This is New Year's Eve of all days. But I got to thank you so much for enjoying this channel, Flash1, and wishing us a happy new year, and hopefully Ukraine can have a happy new year as well. But really quickly, let's make sure to grab a live chat. And Matthew, I actually want to take a couple of live chats here and just kind of answer them myself instead of picking one from our spreadsheet, because a lot of y'all actually had loads of questions when I told you at the beginning of the stream that I had gone shooting today with an M4 carbine and ended up qualifying at 600 yards. I went specifically to a range called CMP Talladega, which is the civilian marksmanship program that operates out of Talladega, and it's considered to be one of the most technologically advanced ranges in the nation. I'll try and show you what it looks like. This is actually the range right here. This is the range I was on. This is a 600-yard range, and the targets I was hitting were these all the way back here, and I was firing from this little, shed-like building right there. Let me see if I can find you all a picture of what this range really there we go. So those targets way out there were the ones I was firing at, and I was firing at target number 35 today. But I went out there with my FN M4 carbine. It's the one we actually got to try and review on this channel here in the future and talk about the U.S. Army M4 carbines. So we kitted it up to be Army spec, so it has the same light that they would have issued to soldiers. It has the ACOG as well, with the same kind of colored reticle and everything. Like we are still planning to do a review on that thing. We do not know how law school is going to interfere with that, because we've decided we're still going to keep on going to law school. So, you know, lots of stuff coming up in the future. A lot of y'all are asking, what kind of ammo was I using? All that kind of stuff. To answer that question, very good question from all of y'all who asked what kind of ammo I used. I was using basic Winchester target ammo, you know, the stuff you can pick up from the store. Wasn't using any kind of match grade ammo or anything like that. Just, you know, standard off the shelf Winchester target ammo. With a M4, you know, normal M4, just, you know, elevated the ACOG to 600 yards and started shooting. And I ended up hitting a fairly decent grouping. I think the grouping was like at the widest, like 2.5, maybe 3 MOA at 600 yards with an M4. It wasn't that bad. I'm trying to think though, because I think that number may be off. I think it was a little bit wider than that. Because, you know, I'm not like a sniper or anything, you know, I'm not like Chris Kyle or, you know, the Simo Aya or anything like that. But it was not bad, especially considering that I never shot out that far. The farthest I've ever shot out before today was, I think, like 200 yards or really like 150 realistically. So shooting out to 600 yards was a massive thing today. And I was really blown away I was even hitting the target at all, much less getting somewhere. I think realistically it was more like 4.5 MOA. Was like the real like dispersion at that distance that I was hitting, but I was still really blown away because I was reading online on the forums. Everyone was like, yeah, you can't hit 600 yards with an M4. It's just impossible. And I was like, that sounds ludicrous, because, you know, a usual firefight occurs at like 400 yards. It ought to be able to reach out even farther than 400, maybe like 700 or 800 in my opinion, although the bullet drop is, you know, getting pretty significant at 600. But beyond that, I hope that does address that the best I can, because a lot of y'all had a great deal of questions about that, and I would love to get into marksmanship shooting more. It's just that there's not really a lot of like long range marksmanship parks here in Alabama. It's really just this one. And also, you know, not to like make any like strong statements about the CMP, but the range officers they have here at this marksmanship park in particular have got to be like the rudest I've ever dealt with on a standard. Like, I went here 3 years ago and they were rude, and I was like, you know, maybe it's just a tough crew that they have. Went out there, I think several times after that, they were still rude. Went out there today, they are still rude. 3 years later, like, the entire staff has changed, but they still hire like some of the rudest range officers I've ever dealt with. And of course, you know,
I say call them out, because, you know, it's people like that that run people off from the shooting hobby. And to be honest with you, like, I've dealt with that before, not quite to the level you described today, but, you know, when people go out to go shoot guns, they don't want to encounter, you know, people that are trying to be tryhards, you know, coming out there to be rude and show you up and stuff like that. It's like, you know, I understand you gotta have range safety, but you can go about it in a, you know, professional way and not necessarily be an asshole about it.
Oh, yeah, another thing, like, this was something that aggravates me. Usually when I go up to folks, I try and be courteous and shake folks' hands. And one thing I did today, I was like, oh, hey, how are you doing? And I tried to shake the guy's hand. He said, I don't shake hands. I was like, oh, well, here's my papers then. And also, Jay Langer said, range officers are not supposed to be nice. I don't think that's a good precedent to make, though, because you have a lot of brand new people. The CMP's goal, the Civilian Marksmanship Program, by the way, just to give a little bit of information, is a civilian marksmanship program that was approved and pretty much operated by the U.S. federal Congress to try and foster civilian marksmanship in the public. Because back in the day when the CMP was founded at the turn of the last century, it was the idea that the CMP would help out to train the U.S. Population. Really, at the time, it was just the male population that could possibly be drafted or conscripted into the U.S. Army in times of war, that they would just naturally be marksmen. And so they wouldn't have to have a massive focus on marksmanship training in military service, because it would just inherently be known. But having very rude range officers is going to turn a lot of people away. And that's something that I have a complaint about. You don't see that at every range. Range officers at most ranges I go to are actually quite nice people and are very helpful and like to get to know you and know what you're doing. And if you're new, they're very helpful, very nice people. But the CMP's job is supposed to be fostering the growth of really marksmanship as a hobby and trying to, you know, get people into it. And being rude like that, you're only going to turn people away. Because if that was my first time experience ever trying to shoot was with the range officers at the CMP, I would not go shooting again. I would just say, you know what? I'm good. I think I'm just going to put the gun on the wall and use it as a wall hanger and just, you know, not do that again. And also BC Scam was like, report them. Yeah, I don't think it will help because it seems as though they only hired those people at CMP. Whoever's like the hiring officer there, they just like to pick these people. And, you know, they're just rude, or they train them to be rude. I don't know what it is, but it's like a standard. And it's something that I think ought to change, because if you're trying to get people into a hobby, you want to be opening and, you know, and I get it, and, you know, and I get it. Like, I want some people to be clear on this, because I know some people are like, oh, you know, shooting is a dangerous sport. Yes, it is, because you do have the chance of killing someone if you make a mistake. But at the same time, you know, you have to, you can't be just gruff and really rude to people because of that. You know, people are still people. People will make mistakes, but you gotta, you know, kind of guide them through it, especially if they're a brand new shooter. Now, I didn't deal with that because I've been to seeing people before, know the rules and everything. But if that's your first time going anywhere, yikes, you know, good luck, man, because that's probably the roughest experience you're gonna have, rudeness wise. You know, from any marksmanship range I've ever been to. But with that, I hope that kind of addresses all of the questions we had, kind of sponsored a load of questions we had about the shooting that went on today and everything. And hopefully we get to do that a little bit more. Some of y'all are saying to take tomorrow off. Actually, we wouldn't be able to go to the range anyways. They're closed tomorrow. But I would like to do that a little bit more and try and get into that, because it seems really interesting and fun to me to try and do marksmanship shooting in actual long ranges like 600 yards instead of just shooting at 100 yards like this, which was, you know, it's kind of lame. I'm not gonna lie, 100 yards is kind of lame. But anyways, speaking of that, I hope that does address all of that fairly well. And thank you so much once again, Flash One, for sponsoring those live chats and helping us to keep this channel running and allowing me a little bit of a moment to talk about a hobby I find kind of interesting, but hope that there will be some changes at least in that regard. And so many people are giving heat to range officers. I mean, like, geez, a lot of y'all apparently have had bad experiences. But anyways, hope that does address that well. And BC Skyman is actually saying he will drop by there and take a look himself. Good luck, man. Good luck. Good luck.
Good luck to you. Good luck, man.
But moving on from that question segment and back into the news, we're going to be starting off in the northeastern area near Kupiansk. We got to see that over the past 24 hours, Russian forces have been hit fairly hard by the 22nd Brigade in this direction. The 22nd Brigade, from what we understand, just got introduced to the frontline action in this area around a week and a half ago. And this is one of our first videos we've seen of them hammering Russian forces out in the field. We can see that after some mortar fire landed on the Russians are now beginning to retreat and try and fall back in their trench work. But it seems as though the Ukrainian mortars are just dialing in and continuing to follow their retreat down the trench. Oh my lord, I thought the whole trench blew up with their outro. I was like, oh my god! Like, look at this, man. I was looking at that mortar explosion. I was like, alright, nice, nice. And then that little one, I was like, okay, grenade fire. And then that came up. I was like, oh my god. I was like, they all died. But anyways. But that's the end of the clip right there. Very nice to see. And of course, very good to know that the 22nd Brigade was able to get onto the front lines and already start taking out some Russians at a fairly good rate. Moving on from that and down to the direction of Kusmivka, we also got to see the 148th Artillery Brigade firing on the front lines at the Russians. This is really just like a montage of pictures of their daily operations, even on into the night, and it appears that what they're using here may be a M777, and in this first picture it also appears that they're operating an M777 as well. Pretty nice stuff, pretty good artillery systems, and hopefully their shots are very accurate. We did get to see that a Mista S is apparently incredibly scared of a HIMARS dropping a tungsten ball bearing round near it, or more so the M30A1, because this thing has a cope cage built on top, and it also has rubber slats installed on the side. The caption actually says that there was apparently a rumor going around, which I never heard about, that rubber slats would be able to help protect against a Mista, well, not a Mista, a HIMARS M30A1's ball bearing tungsten rounds, but I don't really know if that's going to actually work. I think that'd more so be a myth. And also, what's really odd and what's actually kind of crazy is that when you see a T-72, usually most of us see a T-72B, and I'll show you the picture of this right here. So, actually, this is a better picture. They usually have these side skirts installed on the side where you can't really see like the roller wheels on the top of the track links. But this Mista S actually has its side skirts removed, and that's what the tracks look like on the side of a T-72's tank when the side skirts are removed. It kind of looks, honestly, to me, very similar to that of an M60 Patton. I'm not even going to lie. It's very, very similar, at least with how it's rigged up. But still, pretty
It
interesting.
looks pretty cool, actually. I know you're losing a little bit of armor and stuff, but it looks cool.
Oh, the armor you're missing is like literally like superficial. I think these are like rubber or hard plastic slats. So there's like no armor that's coming out of these things. It's really just stopping the roller wheels from getting like caked in mud that's being flung up and stuff like that. But still pretty interesting.
I always thought they were like pretty like thick steel plates that were flappable, or you know, they could flap back and forth if the mud hit them or something. I didn't know they were just like rubber or whatever.
Yeah, these are rubber, but on Western tanks like the M1A1, and I'll show you the one of these, they actually do have steel side skirts over the tracks. And you can actually see that these are fairly thick.
Those are thick. Also, why is this guy aiming the barrel at the camera? That messed me up. I looked up like, whoa, what the hell?
Dude, watch out. The range officers of the CMP, they're going to be getting angry.
Gone down.
Don't flag him, you idiot. But anyways, with that, pretty neat to see. You know, pretty interesting to note that they're trying to improve the Mista S's armor, but I have a feeling that's probably not going to be effective. Anyways, moving on from that little bit of news and on into our next bit a little bit further down the line near Krasnoyarchinsky, we also got to see the Ukrainians firing into a Russian trench system while they were evacuating their own soldiers. This was actually filmed by the Korn group. And we see the Ukrainian tank sitting here looking at the Russian trench. We see the tank's engine sputtered up for a quick moment, suggesting that they may begin to move, and it appears they're whipping it in reverse. This tank actually has, I think, 2 or 3 reverse gears. It's a T-64 BV, so it's a higher-end tank than the normal T-72. But we can see it firing its main gun into the trench works and trying to make sure to keep the Russians at bay as the Ukrainian forces begin to withdraw. We see the tank continuing to hammer the Russian position, trying to keep the Russians down. And they are hammering this position, hitting it over and over and over with high explosive. And that high explosive may not be hitting them directly, it's kind of hitting the berm of the trench, but sometimes when it gets that close, the pressure of the air exploding and then imploding around someone can actually end up causing a serious amount of internal damage. So the shell doesn't necessarily have to hit that soldier, it just has to be near him, and the damage may be inflicted that way. And we see the Ukrainians have now brought some of their wounded soldiers to the back of the T-64 and are now having them evacuated off of the field after providing fire support and keeping the Russians down.
That tank's extra bouncy.
Dude, that suspension be fluffy, man. That suspension do be light. But moving on from that and into our next little bit of news, a little bit further down the lines, we also got to see that in the Bachman area, a HIMARS ended up hitting an Uragan with one of its guided missiles. Here's the clip. We can see the Uragan right there in the tree line, and the HIMARS comes down, air bursting on top of it, and knocking out the Uragan. And you know something, JB? You just brought up shell shock, and I think shell shock is a pretty appropriate term because when you think about it, and this is something I've always thought about, and just hear me out, I'm not a medical expert or anything, but this is what I think. People say that extreme vibrations can cause organ damage, like internal bleeding or even bruising to your organs and stuff like that. Why wouldn't that apply to the brain? You know, if you're subjected to incredibly intense vibrations from artillery fire or explosions, like a tank shell landing right on your trench, but you didn't get hit by the blast or anything, but the strong vibrations and concussion of the shell who's to say that that doesn't mess with your brain a little bit? Maybe like sever some links in between your neural pathways or something like that and make you behave differently because of that. What if that starts to cause psychotic breakdown? Because I know that this is something that the medical field has been exploring since World War I, when shell shock became a concept. But I feel like it's not that out of the question. Of course, not being a medical expert or anything, we're probably going to leave that to Trister 1 or another doctor here or a surgeon here in the chat. But it seems to me like a brain could also be injured, much like any other internal organ could be, from intense vibrations due to some sort of artillery explosion or something similar. And I see Brian Spawn bringing up traumatic brain injuries. And yeah, I mean, like something like that, but, you know, not like a traumatic brain injury in that sort of a form. I mean, something that just changes you behaviorally. You know, nothing major to the brain like that, but just enough that it's not really noticeable, but it does change a person's behavior. I feel like that's something...
I think GW North said it right. He said brain trauma is physical and shell shock is psychological, because I think a traumatic brain injury, that's like a actual like blunt trauma to the head, isn't it? That's what causes that.
I think so. And that's kind of what I'm trying to get at. Like the psychological side of things, maybe there's an actual impact to the brain, you know, like the severing of some neural links, because, you know, severe vibrations, if they can end up damaging your intestines and stuff like that, why wouldn't they be able to damage your brain? Your brain is quite fragile when you think about it. I'm sure that heavy vibrations of a shell concussion could probably cause some sort of damage to neural pathways, you know, minor ones that wouldn't really be noticeable. But, you know, who knows? I'm not a medical expert. I'm just talking of something I'm thinking about. But anyways, moving on from that, nice to see that the Uragan was knocked out. And down in the Bakhmut area, we didn't really see a lot of major frontline changes over the past 24 hours, at least from what I was able to find before the map update. And over the past 24 hours, it appears to have been confirmed there has been no changes. But we did get to see in a video a Russian soldier screwing over his comrade. A drone grenade dropped on top of him, so he decided to throw it onto the other guy. And we see the Russians watching the drone. The drone drops the grenade. He kicks it over, and it explodes right in front of this other Russian soldier right here. Literally screwing the guy over. But with that, that's the end of the clip. We can see the Russians care for each other greatly. And moving on from that and into our next clip, we also got to see a BMW grad, if you want to call it that, from the 114th Brigade firing on Russian forces. This is more so a Toyota grad and a part of Toyotathon.
Wind it up, Ivan.
Ivan.
I was going to say Bliat, but I was like, no, let's switch it up. Let's say Ivan this time.
And that's the end of that clip, showing that little Toyota truck firing its grad rockets. And very interesting to see that the Ukrainians are starting to field those somewhat commonly in the armed forces. Moving on from that little bit of news and further down and into the Avdiivka battlefield, we did get to see that over the past 24 hours, a literal non-existent amount of frontline changes have occurred. And that is something fairly interesting to note. It appears that the Ukrainian defenses are holding up incredibly well in this area. Moving on to the direction of Krasnoyarivka and the Stepove front, we got to see that Russian forces were hit incredibly hard, but I put a specific caption on this to not show this. Y'all will have to go down into the link in the description below, click down there, and go to that clip if you want to see it. I do have to warn y'all, it is very graphic. It shows, I believe, one Ural 4320 that was hit before the soldiers were able to dismount, and it is incredibly gory, but I thought I would make sure to show y'all that clip, or at least have it to where y'all can see it, so that way y'all can get a real idea of what the battlefield's looking like outside of what we can show on YouTube. Moving on from that and into our next bit of news, we did also get to see some Russians trying to escape, and it doesn't appear that they were able to do that too successfully. All right.
Oh, very copyrighted.
it's. When you see this Russian soldier just kind of walking around the street, it looks like he doesn't really know what he's doing.
This Russian thought he heard a red hot chili pepper. He said, "Oh, it's so spicy coming my way. I better run."
He said, "Is this the hot chip challenge?" And no, it's the hot drone challenge.
Ay, ay, ay. Some people said, it's a marathon, not a sprint. This guy said, screw that, I'm running. Oh, he turned around and looked. You're not supposed to do that. Oh, and he paid the price.
Oh, goodness.
Ay, ay, ay. Oh, he did a juke.
Oh.
Put this man in the NFL. He's going for the touchdown, I'm telling you.
Oh.
Oh.
Oh, there's an ammo cook-off, too.
It just turned into bowling. We got a strike. Oh, goodness.
Goodness me.
Gracious, this
And
is not good.
we see him going, look, he's getting a sack of potatoes. And then that's the
What
end of
the
clip.
hell? Is he pointing and laughing?
Was he? It looks like he is.
What in the hell?
Man.
Huh.
I guess this guy is just making the best of things. You know, when life gives you lemons, you make lemonade. And I guess this fella here, he's just having a kick out of the whole thing.
Given a positive attitude, I guess that's all you can say about him.
Always look on the bright side of life. But anyways, moving on from that into our next clip, we also got to see the continued fighting near the area. All right, we're going to mute that. That sounded like something else going on there, but we can see the Bradley rolling up into the field, a typical sign of the 47th Brigade in action somewhere. We see it firing its autocannon. Now, I just realized, y'all, that we saw this clip yesterday. It is a duplicate. They're kind of hard to catch duplicates these days because a lot of the Bradley clips do look quite similar. But we do have another one showing the Bradley firing on the Russians here. Check this out. This is a new clip. I can confirm that. We see it firing on one of the tree lines near Stepove and trying to get the Russians down. Eric says, CMP is amazing. Get your skin thicker. Hey, man, the CMP is great technologically and all, but the range officers are pretty rude. I mean, you know, when I go somewhere, I actually want to enjoy my time there. I don't want to have some range officer breathing down my neck, and when you want to ask them a simple question about how their range operates, they have to be rude about it. Like when I go up and ask someone, hey, is the unknown distance range open today? And they go, it's closed. Like, I should know that, and no one told you that? That's just rude for no reason. I mean,
I've never seen that fellow, by the way. That could actually be a range officer from the CMP. I wouldn't be shocked.
Well, hey, like, if you are a range officer from the CMP, take some notes, because the CMP is supposed to be fostering marksmanship in the public. You're not supposed to be running people away from. And I got to be honest with you, while I'm not being run away, I know a lot of brand new shooters would be run away with that kind of an attitude. It's not a good one to have. That would be like us being on this show and gatekeeping the Ukraine war and blasting people for asking questions. Every time they threw in a super chat, say, what a stupid question, or act like it's a stupid question. That's not a smart move. But that's the end of the clip right there. And I got to tell y'all, that is pretty impressive to see that Bradley laying down that kind of firepower along an entire tree line. Moving on from that and down into the area of Pisky, we also got to see how the Sappers were working in the Donetsk front line. And this was actually a video made by none other than United 24. It's been a long time since we've shown them on the channel, and they have a pretty interesting clip right here.
Today we are delving into the often overlooked heroes of the Ukrainian army, the support forces. While these dedicated men and women may not be the ones who storm enemy positions head-on, the significance of their tasks cannot be overstated. Their roles, though less visible, are just as crucial as any.
The support forces of the Ukrainian army play a crucial role in processes like fortifications, logistics and mining. To provide an insider's perspective, we've embedded with the 48th Engineering Brigade.
A good sapper needs to have it all. His arms, legs, and eyes need to be in the right place. This is what makes a good sapper.
Being a sapper entails crucial responsibilities. You may be mining potential routes of enemy attacks or moving in front of an assault unit, ensuring their path is clear. Ahead of the first serves as their motto.
It is worth mentioning that we were planning to join a Sapper unit that is working near Avdiivka, which is considered to be the hottest point of the front line at the moment, but they receive casualties there on a regular basis, so it is just too risky.
We both mine and demine, and we accompany different groups, ensuring their safety, so that they can fulfill the task. The situation there is quite difficult now. 3 days ago, we sent out a sapper group, and all 4 people got concussed.
This is the BMZ trailed mining system, capable of delivering 2 tons of Soviet PM anti-tank mines in just 15 minutes. Given the strategic situation, a substantial part of the sapper's tasks involves mining. However, deploying this vehicle full of TNT anywhere close to the front is a one-way ticket. Consequently, sappers in Avdiivka have to work at night, manually carrying mines under the constant threat of shelling. Imagine this as your job. Building fortifications is the bread and butter of army engineers. Rostislav operates a specialized earth-moving machine designed for digging trenches. His shoulder patch proudly says landscape design specialist. Despite the machine's age, it still outpaces the alternative of digging with the shovel.
Much faster. We can dig approximately 70 meters an hour. The closest I've worked to the front lines was 700 meters. That's 700 meters to enemy positions.
His colleague Maxim, a construction
That's pretty close, by the way. That's about as far as I shot with a rifle today, 700 yards. So, you know, when you think about it, a standard rifleman could probably hit this guy if he had a clear line of sight while he was operating in that trench digging vehicle. So you can kind of get an idea of how dangerous this job really is, because, you know, one wrong move and they pop up into the open for a second and they may become the target for a Russian infantryman.
worker in civilian life is essentially building logistical routes. This job often entails considerable risk, but is crucial, ensuring the constant flow of resources and ammunition to the front line every day. As we can see, Maxim's BAT-2 roadmaker already bears battle scars. He mentions it's been shelled 5 times when on duty.
We pave roads where necessary. We try to prepare them so that our equipment can easily reach the positions and carry out tasks.
As US Army General John Pershing famously said during World War I, infantry wins battles and logistics win wars. This quote holds even in 21st century warfare, where tools like bridges and pontoons play a crucial role. For example, this heavy mechanized bridge, capable of deployment in just 20 minutes, covering a span of 10 meters.
Roads and ferries, and logistics in general, are an opportunity to send reinforcements, provide supplies, get people out of the danger zone, and attack from unexpected directions.
As a part of Western aid to Ukraine, engineers have adopted the belly bridge technology, a modular bridge design from World War II, known for its compactness, ease of construction, and independence from heavy machinery. In this frontline city, these bridges are frequently targeted and destroyed by the enemy, only to be rebuilt again.
You can literally install it in a day, like a puzzle. It can withstand up to 60 tons, with no problems at all.
A significant amount of work goes unnoticed when the army is at war. With this episode, we aim to show the unsung heroes of the Ukrainian army and their great efforts. Whether it's logistics, mining, or fortification units, each of these individuals put their lives in danger for one common goal.
United 24 Media.
Well, they didn't put in the noise at the end. That was weird. But anyways, that was the end of that clip, and showing a lot of the dangers and the work and the efforts that the sappers of Ukraine and the combat engineers put in. A very unsung part in most armies in the modern world, especially the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, who in the U.S. is probably one of the best domestically and probably one of the best around the world. In case y'all didn't know, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is pretty much charged with the responsibility of making sure that New Orleans doesn't sink below sea level like it already has. Well, more so to make sure it doesn't go below sea level in any real, meaningful, or dangerous way. There's actually a massive pumping station here in New Orleans that is run by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers that makes sure to pump out any kind of water, making it into the city or near the city, so that way it doesn't end up under the waves. Pretty cool fact, and also another big thing that the Army, well, a Corps of Engineers does anywhere in the world. But the Ukrainians, as we can see, are doing that in practicable ways on the battlefield that is making sure to help the Ukrainian forces to be in a much better position than the Russians can be. But moving on from that little bit of news in the area of Pisky and moving on towards Krnyky, we did get to see that the Russians are trying to conduct local acts of terror, as we saw them visibly shelling the Krnyky thermal power plant today. That is the thermal power plant out there. We can see smoke billowing off of it as we hear the sounds of continued explosions. And with that, that's the end of the clip right there, but showing a decent amount of the damage that the Russians are causing to this geothermal power plant, or the thermal power station. Moving on from that and a little bit further down the lines, because we didn't really get a lot of news from Krnyky today at all, but moving on down into the area of the southern front, we didn't see any notable front line changes, but we did see a continuation of combat actions showing that there is some kind of activity going on in between the Ukrainians and the Russians. But moving on into the area of Wheelpool, we did get to see that they were able to shoot down a drone today with some small arms.
Разворачивайся на нас!
You're the drone. One shot, 2 shots, 3 shots, 4.
Yes!
Oh, they got it!
Yes.
Impressive. And what a shot. What a feat. I think he got in like 4 or 5 shots. Really impressive stuff. Moving on from that into the area of Krnyky Rozdori, we also got to see that Amista S lost the counter battery battle against the HIMARS. And Chad music ensues. And while we watch this clip, because y'all all know what's about to happen, just wanted to circle back around to the range officer talk stuff in the chat. Because a lot of y'all are talking about this still and talking about, you know, range officers have to be rude or they don't need to be rude. My honest opinion is that there's no reason for anyone to be rude anywhere when you're doing anything at all, because that just doesn't make any sense. You're just making it unenjoyable for them, and if you're that miserable, maybe you need to find a different job. That's honestly my take on it, because why in the world make others people's time unenjoyable just because you want it to be? Like, I don't get, like, that's kind of my thing. I don't get people who are like that, and also some people are like, well, you know, they're like former like military. Listen, I gotta say this. I hate to say this and break it to people, but just because you were in the military does not give you an excuse to be an asshole. You've got to be a normal person like everyone else. You got to be nice, polite, and everything. You know, like there's a point. Like, and some people are like, well, that's being a man. No, there's a difference in between being a man and an asshole. And I feel like a lot of range officers don't get that distinction in between being a man and an asshole. You know, that's like
facts.
That's one thing that I think is very important to get out there, is that being a douche does not mean you're being a real dude. That just means you're being a douche. You know,
I've heard from some people that the people that act like that are compensating for something. I've just heard that from people. I'm not sure if it's true.
Oh, yeah. And also I see some people saying you have to work with them. Yeah, there will be people like that out there in the world, but I feel like they ought to feel the scorn of everyone around them instead of people just trying to act like, you know, that's them. Like, people should be dissuaded from acting like that. It's just rude, it's impolite, and it's just unenjoyable for everyone else to be around. You know, that's the way I look at it, because, you know, like, you can be whatever you want. You could be a Navy SEAL. I still don't think that gives you an excuse to be a douche. You know, even if you're a range officer or whatever. You know, that's the way I look at it. But we can see the
and also who's miserable and angry and upset that wants to go hang around like shooting guns all day long. That doesn't seem like a good mixture.
Oh, and I got to tell you, I got to be honest. Like, that's a little bit of a gripe I have with like the shooting world, is that you have 2 different kinds of people in the shooting world. You have the coolest, down-to-earth people you'll ever meet in the shooting world, and then you have the most uptight douchebag people you'll ever meet in the world. Like, I'm not even kidding. Like, Jay Bagwell is a great example of the first kind, the really laid-back, down-to-earth kind that makes shooting an incredibly fun thing, an incredibly educational and fun experience on top of that. Amazing top-down. The range officers I dealt with at the CMP today were the complete opposite. They make shooting unfun. And shooting is fun. Like, if y'all have never gone range shooting before, I highly recommend it. Just make sure to do it safely, though. Because it is a very interesting experience, and you may even find that you really enjoy that kind of stuff. But having people like that just makes it unfun. You know, that's just one thing I have to say. Like, it's like that with everything. And I feel like with Matthew, because Matthew's not really into firearms as much as me. He's more so into like motorcycles and cars. You really don't run into that much in the car world, at least from what I think.
No, man, the car guys are chill. Like, the motorcycle people are too. I used to ride motorcycles, and you know, there's obviously that stupid thing between sport bike riders and Harley riders, which I'll never understand. They won't wave to each other, but you know, everybody's pretty chill. Like, everybody just like enjoys the motorcycles, looks at them and stuff, and it's a dangerous thing itself. Like, if you act like a fool, you can get killed on a car or a motorcycle. So it's, you know, similar to guns in a similar sort of way, but not exactly. But you know, nobody's an asshole just in the car community, unless they're, you know, a rich douche with a Lambo or something like
Yeah,
that, is trying to show off.
And you know, and my thing, like with that, like to like round this all out, is people are like, oh yeah, but guns are more dangerous than cars. But by the statistics, I think it's something like nearly 40,000 people die a year in motor vehicle related accidents versus something like 12,000 people die per year in all gun related incidents. So by the stats, a car is 4 times deadlier than a rifle, or any kind of a firearm for that matter. But still, at the same time, those people in that hobby can be laid back and relaxed, although knowing that there is some inherent danger if you do things that are, you know, with a car, like racing or anything like that. It can end up being deadly, or just driving around in the day-to-day occurrence. But at the same time, I don't get it. I feel like the gun world attracts either really relaxed people who really just like guns for the technological aspect of them and their historical aspect, all that kind of stuff. And then there's the people who come in there because they want to be a part of Meal Team 6 or something. I don't know what it is, but like that's like one of my gripes about the gun community. I absolutely love guns. I think they're very cool. You know, not on any other perspective rather than I just like them and I think they're neat, and also they tie into history a lot. But you know, some of the people you'll run into in that world, just goodness gracious. I mean, what is up?
I feel like you needed to get this off your chest. I feel like it was something that was weighing on you.
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, I don't mean to make an entire stand-up routine on this whole thing, but you know, goodness gracious, like, y'all make sure whenever you go out there in public, if you are into shooting of any kind, hunting, marksmanship, whatever it may be, make sure that those kind of people, the rude douchebags, stay to themselves. And you know, even if you have to, like, step in and take over helping someone out to make sure those douchebags don't run people away from the hobby. But with that, moving on to our next clip, we also got to see some more Ukrainian combat engineers at work with a indigenous UR-83 demining system. It's kind of like the Miklik, the M58 Miklik from the United States, but it's a Soviet-made system that is quite old. But we can see them using it here, down here in the southern front, and also sending out some drones to survey their work and to make sure that it was quite effective. But with that, moving on to our next clip, we also got to see some Russian positions getting hit in this area. And we can see the Russian right there. What's going on around here, Bliet? Oh, Bliet. Well, incineration. And oh, oh my lord. And so with that, that's the end of the clip right there. Pretty interesting to see. And with that, we are now moving on from that little clip in the southern front and down into the Kherson direction, because we got 2 clips. First, we got to see that in the area of Novomaichka, the Russian air defense system's at work.
Also, Kaltenberg said, enforcers be ready. The lawyers are especially rude and bad. And I know that. I do know that for a fact. You know, lawyers might have a reason to be mad and angry, upset, though. Like, honestly, they might have one, because some of them are, you know, in some pretty bad shape in their careers and mentally. But, you know, the people at the gun range, I'm like, you know, they may have stuff going on in their personal lives, but you're just there monitoring people shooting guns. It's not like you're, you know, trying to handle a trial or something like that, like somebody's got the death penalty.
And also another thing, some of y'all are like, say this to the range officer, say that. The problem with that is that the range officers are usually given like this godlike authority over the range where they can just kick you out or trespass you, and they actually have the authority to do that. So if you say something to them, you know, if they're that kind of a douchebag, they may just go, oh yeah, well, you're kicked off the range, and then you can't shoot, and then you're like, well, what do you know? It's kind of, y'all know what I'm talking about. It's kind of like anyone who has any bit of power and they start to abuse it. You know, that could be anyone. It could be a police officer, a judge, you know, anyone, a politician for that matter. All of them end up doing that sometimes, and it's just like that, but on a smaller scale at a range. But, you know, that's the way I see it. And Jimmy Knox, I rarely ever see range officers here in rural Canada. Lucky you. Lucky you. But I don't mean to disparage all range officers, though. I want to make that clear, because I know a good deal of range officers, a lot of them here in the local area, and a lot of them are very cool, down-to-earth people, just like I was talking about. They're Group 1. I've only seen Group 2 at the CMP. Like, I'm not even kidding. I've never seen Group 2 anywhere else but the CMP. And we can see here the Russian vehicles continue to try and move around as they're being stricken by the Ukrainian artillery fire. And we can see that little APC down there smoking. And with that, that's the end of the clip right there. And we're now going to be moving on from that little bit of news and on into our next bit in the Kherson area, where we got to see some Ukrainian forces trying to cross the Dnipro River on boat and coming under some pretty heavy fire from Russian forces. Here's the clip. Also, this was filmed by Madyar.
Покажу. Під таким шквалом ворожого вогню пересуваються Дніпром човни морпіхів та підрозділів ТРО при форсуванні та здійсненні логістики вдень та вночі. А ось паде подавлений хробачий дрон FPV. Реальний жах. А це погляд очима хробачого пілота упиря. Наш човен лише підходить до перехрестя. Нема часу досити керування і ми валимо відео. Інакше, на відміну від АГС, керований дрон нанесе влучний удар.
And with that, that's the end of the clip right there, but showing some of the dangers that Ukrainian forces go through trying to cross the Dnipro River. But from what we know at the moment, the Ukrainian forces are still holding the Krnyky garrison strong and continuing their attacks deeper into the forest belt, heading towards the Oleski Sands National Nature Park. But moving on from that, it's now time for us to get up to Kyiv and cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 675 of the war. And so, without further ado, here is the peach. As we all know, the peach.
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці, українки. Коротко про цей день. Ставка. Особлива підсумкова за рік. І про рік наступний. Те, що було зроблено цьогоріч. І те, що буде потрібно зробити наступного року. Була доповідь главкома, Генштабу. Також представлений план наших дій на 24-й. Була доповідь розвідки, ГУР та зовнішньої розвідки. Про те, до чого окупанти готуються. Та загалом про ситуацію, про загальні військово-політичні очікування та можливі події в світі. Попри все, що буде відбуватись в інших країнах, попри будь-які політичні зміни та настрої, нам потрібен достатній потенціал, щоб робити своє, щоб досягти своїх цілей. Зрозуміло, що наступний рік стане часом багатьох рішень, глобальних рішень. І Україні потрібно вміти вплинути на них, вміти досягти своїх цілей. Будемо боротися за наш вплив, за справедливість для України. Я вдячний усім лідерам, які допомагають, які з нами від 24 лютого і будуть з нами в 24-му році. Сьогодні увесь день доповіді щодо ліквідації наслідків російських ударів. Загалом лише від вчорашньої російської атаки постраждали більше 120 наших міст і сіл, 39 загиблих. Мої співчуття усім, хто втратив рідних та близьких. Дуже важливо, щоб була надана вся необхідна допомога постраждалим, тим, чиї будинки та квартири пошкоджені терористами. Це важливо відпрацювати і на урядовому, і на місцевому рівнях. Українські рятувальники, лікарі, поліцейські, усі працівники комунальних підприємств, які задіяні. Я дякую вам за допомогу людям, за те, що ви працюєте цілодобово, аби зберегти якнайбільше життів. Зараз у Харкові знов триває рятувальна операція. 17 людей постраждали від чергового удару. І за кожен такий удар по Харківщині, по нашій Херсонщині, по містах, селах Донеччини, Запорізькій області, за всі удари по Одесі, Сумщині, по Києву, всім іншим нашим містам, регіонам, за кожен шахет, за кожну російську ракету буде справедлива відповідальність держави-терориста. І політична, і дуже практично. Ми готуємось в наступному році зробити більше зброї. Ми вже маємо чіткий графік нашої міжнародної роботи. У січні ми працюємо з нашими партнерами над рішеннями, яких потребує кожен український воїн, увесь наш народ, наша держава. І ці рішення будуть сильними. Я хочу окремо подякувати усім партнерам за нову оперативну роботу для посилення нашої ППО. 24/7 працюємо не тільки ми у вільному світі, і це важливо. Важливо, щоб протидія терору не припинялась ані на день, щоб Росія не змогла виграти нічого у цій війні. І так і буде. Я дякую усім нашим воїнам, я дякую усім, хто працює заради нашої держави і людей. Слава Україні!
And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Zelensky, and we're now going to be moving on into the next little bit of news. But with that, I have to say really quickly that I saw BC Skyman give me a absolute amazing offer. And I gotta say, what one hell of an offer. BC Skyman said, Enforcer needs to do a review on my broom handle Mauser. That is a C96 Mauser. Let me go pull that up real quick because these things are super cool. Have you ever
Also,
seen...
Enforcer, real quick question. What guns did you bring to the gun range? I'm just curious today, just real quick.
Just the FN Hurstel M4A1 with the ACOG scope.
Okay, I was just checking something. Never mind.
But right here, this is the one that BC Skyman is talking about. Oh my goodness, y'all. This is one cool pistol right here. This is one of the first semi-automatic pistols that was kind of introduced into service in the military around the world. It's really bizarre because it actually gets loaded by stripper clips, like a full-scale rifle. It fires the 9x19 Parabellum cartridge, not a bad cartridge at all, but it did end up being viewed as somewhat obsolete by around the time of World War I, but it still ended up being used all the way into World War II, even by the Waffen SS, who started to try and convert these things into almost like machine pistol style pistols. Really, really unique stuff. Really cool stuff. And I gotta say, what one hell of an offer right there. And I also saw the fella who said the CMP isn't that bad said, I'm bringing an M1D British infield sniper and a G43 sniper. Was to shoot real rifles? Oh, wait, hang on. I don't even know what that means. But anyways.
That's what I was asking you. I was wondering if you'd brought any of those weapons, because I was like, maybe he's trying to tell you this is the guy that works at the CMP, but never mind.
No, because let's see, a G43 with a scope would be like 12,000, so I certainly couldn't afford that. A British...
Oh, he's flexing on us. That's what he's doing.
Yeah. A British infield sniper would be pretty expensive as well. I think that would at least be several $1,000s. So I know for certain we would not even be able to afford those. But an M1D, I can't say that, we'll look into that a little bit. There was a chance that may be reviewed in the future, although the one we know about is in unfired condition, so we wouldn't be able to fire it on air. We would just be able to talk about it and show it to y'all. But with that, hope that does address that well. Good job on your collection, but regardless of your collection, I think my point still stands. There's no excuse to be a douche, no matter the collection. You could have an MG42 for all I care. I still don't think douches are an okay thing to be. Because if so, then why don't I come and just ruin your fun at the range next time and just be an asshole? Why not? If that's fine, why not? Grow thicker skin. But with that, we are on to the polls. And so what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and I guess some people like the pain. They're like, bring on the abuse. They just love it for some reason. I don't know why. They freaks out here, I'm telling you. But anyways, moving on to our first poll question. It says, will you be watching the stream on New Year's night, which is tomorrow night? And 77% said yes, 23% said no. So actually, a big number of y'all are not going out for New Year's Eve. Let's go! Same here, to be honest with you. Not going out on New Year's Eve. I'm going to take it easy, get prepared for law school, so I can't blame you. And at this point, I'm not sure what we're doing with the stream on that night. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I would say, first off, interesting to hear. Second off, I'm still going to be debating whether we run a New Year's Eve stream tomorrow. Because while a lot of y'all aren't going to be going out at the same time, it's been a very tiresome week for us. As you all know, we did end the stream a little early, and it's getting very close to the start of law school, and we haven't really had that much of a break over Christmas. Like on Christmas Day, I think I worked harder on Christmas Day than most other days during the break, and so I haven't actually really had a day off. So New Year's Eve may be a good time to take a day off, and then we might try and do then we'll just double down on the next Sunday fundraiser, just really blow it out of the park 2 times over. So I think that might be what we're doing, but very interesting to hear that a lot of y'all aren't going to be going out. But with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, so moving on to our second poll question, it says, is Ukraine being led militarily in the right direction by Zelensky, or should he defer to Zaluzhny? 29% said it depends on the situation. 28% said Zelensky should assert control. 27% said Zelensky should defer to Zaluzhny, and 17% said unsure. And in my opinion, I think that Zelensky should always defer to his military generals, which is Zaluzhny. And we heard a while back that there was some confusion about the 500,000 men getting mobilized. Zaluzhny claimed that he had never heard that, and Zelensky announced it on his own. So apparently there was a lack of communication there. But in my opinion, if Zelensky ever gets to the point where he feels the need to take control over Zaluzhny, then he should simply dismiss Zaluzhny and then replace him with someone else. I don't think he should necessarily override his military knowledge, because Zelensky is not a military leader. He's done a great job getting support, but he needs to defer to the people that are supposed to know what they're doing. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say the military decisions should best be left to the generals, with some maybe advice or recommendations by the president. Usually that's the best way to do things, because I actually saw a great point brought up earlier. The main reason the Germans ran into so many strategic failures throughout World War II was really just because of the direct orders of Hitler. A lot of people said, oh, you know, a lot of people say nowadays, oh, Hitler was a military genius. The guy was a military idiot. If you go through and actually look at what he was talking about and what they did because of what he said, everything he suggested was an absolute waste of resources, completely ineffective, completely inefficient, and absolute failures on the field. There was a lot more success that the Germans had when commanders were allowed to do what they wanted instead of what Hitler wanted. I'm not saying, you know, we wanted the Nazis to win World War II or anything. Honestly, Hitler was the Allies' best asset in ensuring that the Germans had no chance in hell, although they already had no chance. They really had no chance in hell of winning World War II because of him. But I feel like it's best to kind of allow people to do what they want. There's a few times, though, that isn't the case. Like, for example, in the Civil War, the U.S. Civil War, Abraham Lincoln actually had a lot more direct control over his generals than really anyone before him, thanks to the telegram. But his direct oversight and command was actually very beneficial, because he was a very aggressive leader and was able to find out that generals like McClellan were very incompetent and very cowardly in their command, and was able to have them removed and replaced with more effective generals eventually. Although, you know, General Burnside wasn't necessarily a great general either, but eventually he was able to replace them and find generals that were able to get the job done, like Grant, who was a very aggressive commander, much like Lincoln was looking for. But still, at the same time, Lincoln didn't tell them everything to do. He just knew there needs to be an aggressive campaign conducted against the Confederacy, so let's make sure that generals are following through with aggressive campaign ideals and policies to make sure that things are done at a much faster pace, and the Confederacy isn't allowed to try and fight out the war as a war of attrition, which would be a winning war for them.
That's Enforcer, and real quick, that's an excellent point, because in my opinion, I'm not sure if everyone agrees, but in my opinion, a good leader should be someone who knows how to assemble a really good team. So the best people for the best positions that he has, and that's where a leader comes in very strong to me. They know how to pick the right people. You know, they don't have to necessarily know everything. They're not Kim Jong-un, because everybody knows Kim Jong-un trying to be the dictator, the know-it-all. He's good at nothing except for stealing everybody's food and eating it all. So as long as somebody knows how to go find the right people, I think that's all you can expect. And Zelensky's done a good job on his end. You know, he's gone out, got support, he's kept Ukraine in the news, and, you know, that's what he's supposed to do. But, you know, you don't have to start going out and start usurping the people that you put in place to lead.
I would agree with that completely. I feel like a president like Zelensky, like a president in that kind of situation, like Lincoln, should have a policy where they go, we would like to conduct a war of attrition or an aggressive campaign against the Russians to push them out of Ukraine. But beyond those general policies, the rest of that needs to be left to the generals themselves and allow them to do their job. And if they don't live up to that policy idea, at least in the abstract, then remove them. But if they're achieving that kind of a policy, or they're conducting it with mixed results, I don't feel like that should be something where they are removed, or where you come in and start to tell them exactly what to do. That's not necessarily leadership, that's more so dictatorship, and that's not necessarily a good thing. Also, it doesn't allow for a great deal of ideas to be spread around and talked about, and I think that's also a very big part of being a leader, is allowing for different ideas and different concepts to be brought about and for people to do their thing. Because the more people do their own thing, the better they'll do it. And if they make a mistake, you know, don't crucify them immediately, you know, crucify them after several mistakes, but let them learn from them. And then if you see that they're never learning from them, then remove them and have them replaced. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion on that poll, because I think that that should largely be left up to the generals instead of to the president. Because Zelensky, we have to remember this, Zelensky is a comedian. You know, and I don't mean to put him down. You know, I know some people are going to take that as me putting him down. But he is a comedian. His thing is show business. It's not the military. It's not anything related to anything in the martial world at all. I mean, it's just entertainment. and more so the normal business side of things. So I have a feeling that someone like Zaluzhny, who has been in the Ukrainian army for decades, probably does have a lot more knowledge of the inner workings of the armed forces than Zelensky would have. So that would be my honest take, because you've got to know your limits, and while you may know some things more than some, but that's a rare instance, especially if they've been doing it as their career field. But with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and we are fresh out of poll questions, so we're moving on to our super chat questions once again. And up first, we have a very generous $140 donation from guess who? Power. And thank you very much, Mr. Power, good sir, for that good support. He put in 1,395 SEK, which is a Swedish krona. And thank you very much. He says, rubber cover seems better suited to shield against heat's signature, the tungsten, and considering safety, one should always promote a culture where people are not afraid to ask. And on the note of TBI/vibration, the body is reacting differently depending on duration and frequency.
And Power Rank cover like 3 separate things. Really cool stuff too. I thank you for covering all those, because those are some of like the really interesting topics of the night. And thank you for the massive support as well, and being one of our Swedish viewers. And I would say the rubber will help to shield against heat, but from what we know, the concept behind that rubber armor is that somehow the rubber will be able to absorb the ball bearings that explode from the M30 warhead. I don't know about that, but the heat signature side of things, that is true. The rubber does a really good job at mitigating heat signatures. The second part is, I do agree, no one should be afraid to ask anything of a range officer. It's so dumb to me. Like, if they're watching, I hope they're like reaping something from this, but usually people like these are very happy with how they act, just being rude to everyone. But when you are at a range, and let me really quickly, CMP mission statement. Let me go get the mission statement of the CMP for you.
I thought you were about to pull up their page and write a Google review. I was about to say this is about to be something. I was about to say, what?
Let's see here. Hang on. Let's see. So, they updated their vision on November 8th of 2022. So let me take y'all here.
Uh-oh, they changed the vision from politeness to rudeness.
So here is the CMP's mission statement, according to them. To lead the nation in marksmanship excellence, providing safe, high quality, and innovative programs with a focus on youth. Okay, so tying in how the range officers are acting with their mission statement, we're going to have these old, mean douchebags near kids trying to teach them how to shoot a gun. That doesn't sound like a good idea to me. There's a conflict here in between their mission statement and what there actually is going on out there, because if those guys are around a kid, that kid is going to be so fried and stressed out of their minds with how this guy is acting around them. They are not focusing on shooting a rifle. They're focusing on making sure that they're not going to be roughhoused by this dude. That's the big thing to me. Like the kind of officers they have, it's not good. It's not good in my opinion. That's one thing I just have to say. I'm going to stick with that forever. And also, let me make sure. Let's see. Here's another thing. They say they want to expand their locations and programs and everything. But what's the point of that if people are going to be run away by how rude people are there? I can tell you all this. So I have friends, and they're some of our best, well, they aren't some, they are our best friends, and we're wanting to get them into marksmanship shooting, and this is really the only public range in this area that goes out that far in range where we can go and take them. They are scared to go just because I told them these folks are rude. This isn't a thing of people are being sensitive. This is seriously keeping people away from getting into marksmanship. That's a big thing, and this is a program, by the way, that isn't just any normal one. This one was founded and run by the U.S. federal government. And not only that, it's funded by taxpayer dollars. This thing should not be a scary program to go to. It shouldn't be a scary range to go to where you're scared of the range officers. It should be something that is fostering marksmanship in the public. That's the whole point of the organization. And it's just not doing that, in my opinion. The rest of this, it's, the CMP continues to grow, maintaining a high standard of marksmanship excellence and safety. But there's a point where you can teach safety, and then there's another point where you have people who aren't really focusing on the safety side of things, or focusing on the power trip side of things of enforcing the safety rules. And that seems to be the kind of feel I get when I go there. That's, that's the thing. That's what I'm trying to get at. So I agree with you completely, Power Ant. You shouldn't be scared to ask these kinds of questions when you go to a range. And Eric said it's not paid for by tax dollars. I'm going to have to go check on that. Let me go check. How is the CMP funded? Let's go pull up that question. Let's see here. Civil, oh my lord, there's a million things called CMP. Civilian marksmanship program funded. Let's go see. Let's see.
Sammy J said, careful of criticism, unfortunately, they might offer you a job. Sammy's thinking this works like the Seinfeld episode, like George berates like the leader or whatever, the boss, and is like, your company sucks, this whole operation sucks. And the guy said, give this man a job. Give him a job quick.
Oh man, wait a minute. That was when he was working for the New York Yankees, wasn't it?
Yeah, he chewed out that the guy who was in charge of the team. What's that guy's name? Damn, what's his name?
Steinbrenner.
That guy who was
Steinbrenner.
Yeah, he chewed out Steinbrenner. He's like, give this man a job quick. He's got a great attitude. Give him a job.
But anyways, cutting it short, apparently they exist through the sale of surplus weapons, although I don't know how that's working, because I was just told they were running out of surplus weapons, and they pretty much have, as far as I saw today. But anyways, moving on from that part and into the next bit, and I would say, as far as the TBI thing, or, the vibrations affecting the brain, I feel like that probably is a serious thing, because people have mentally change from falling off of a horse or getting in a car wreck from the brain damage that's caused, and I feel like that is also applicable in the field of war as well. I feel like that the vibrations of shelling and stuff like that, very intense ones, probably will start to have a mental effect on people through physical means. But with that, hope that does address that well. And some people are like, man, you've covered this range officer thing a lot. Hey, I hate to do it. Sorry, y'all. People keep on bringing up points, and I'm like, that's an interesting point. But anyways, with that, thank you so much once again for support, Power Ant. I hope that does address that well. And thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on rolling, because folks like you have helped to make this thing possible and helped to continue to make this thing possible. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one is going to go to Mark the Kinetic Possum, who throws in a $100 donation. And thank you very much, Mark, as always, for that support. And he's still the possum that is kinetic. It's on the move. He says, a near hit from an artillery shell can cause brain injury, and the brain is soft, and with sudden movements, it bashes against the skull, and contre coup, opposite hit. The effects can last years. And I trust Mark on that, because he's a doctor.
And I thank you so much for the support, Mark, and sharing that with us, because apparently the assumption was correct. The heavy vibrations, the intense vibrations of shelling can cause brain damage and I bet you that will certainly cause a lot of behavioral issues. So thank you for sharing that, and because that's interesting to know, and it's good to know that we were correct on that. And I hate to know that, because that's also something we know a lot down here in Alabama, because everyone always talks about how the NFL kind of hid the fact from the public for a while that the multiple hits that footballers take while playing American football actually causes brain damage over time, kind of a lot like boxers. After they get hit in the head so many times, it actually starts to cause brain damage to them as well. And that is something very unfortunate to know, but at the same time important to think about as well. Brains are really fragile. Nobody really thinks about that, but that thing actually does get knocked around up there, and that is unfortunate to know that shelling can end up causing some pretty decent brain damage. That's quite unfortunate to think about, but also something for military analysts and soldiers in the field to consider when attacking the Russians as well. But with that, thank you so much once again for the mass amount of support, Mark, and sharing your medical knowledge with us, because I know that you were in the medical field, and if anyone would know, it certainly would be you. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And now everyone's talking about the CMP sells this and that. Yeah, the CMP does sell surplus rifles, and when you kind of think about it, in the end, they do make their money. They are kind of supported by Congress, because the Congress approves, well, it's more so the Department of Defense, but, kind of by an extension of Congress, they approve the sale of U.S. military surplus weapons like the M1 Garand to the CMP. They just give the guns to the CMP, and then the CMP sells them. And those guns, of course, were made and paid for through tax dollars nearly like 70, 60 years ago. So in a sense, kind of funded by government money because the guns are from the U.S. Department of Defense and just being given to them. So, kind of in a roundabout way, that is true. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Neil Parsonage, who puts in a $50 donation, and thank you very much, Neil, as well, for that very generous support. And he says, morning, guys. And also, night to you, Neil, because it's late. It's 11 o'clock here at night. But anyways, he says, stewioid o'clock here in Europe. As such, almost never able to watch live, so my question is, in any way apart from Super Chat, live only, to support the channel, is I'm sure many other European LSAers are in the same boat, and also, I love the Cockney accents, by the way.
Hello there. Hello there. So anyways, thank you so much for the massive amount of support. Neil Parsonage, one of our European viewers, and also, it is early over there. Let me check real quick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Hey, bruv.
7. So you're like 7 hours ahead. So that would be like be like 6 in the morning over there. That is pretty early in the morning. I have to say, congratulations on being up that early, because we're going to be like that up early. We're going to be up that early when law school starts again, so I understand the pain, and I hope that this show helps you to get over that like morning fog that we usually have after we wake up. But also, I hate to say that because there's really no way to support the channel beyond a live chat. We do have the Patreon link in the description below, but Patreon, it's it's not really a massive support to the channel. Which is a little unfortunate because, we're trying to make sure that we have ways to keep this thing running. Because,
Hey, I'll say the Patreon's great to me. I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, I mean, no, I want to say thank you to all the patrons, but not a lot of people have joined our Patreon is really what I'm trying to say. I said it in a bad way there, but
they're missing out. They're missing out,
because we got photo shoots on there, and we're planning to make sure that it keeps kicking and going pretty strongly. So, if y'all like it, hey, get on there. But beyond that, there isn't really a lot of ways to support this channel, and we always want to make sure that the support is simple and very transparent. We've actually gotten a lot of heat because of how transparent our support is compared to other AdSense people who only take in AdSense by the thousands each day, and then we take in, whatever we can get on Super Chats, and it's public for everyone to see. And then we get crap for it because we don't make it invisible like everyone else does and just make, millions off of this. We don't. So, sadly, there is no other way really to support outside of the Super Chats beyond the Patreon. And let's see. And also, a lot of European viewers, I hate it because our channel runs at a time where all European viewers are asleep for the most part, except for a very small few, like Sax2, who's always here, and he's one of our British viewers. But it's really hard for the European viewers to get on. I wish we could change that. But during law school, we certainly wouldn't be able to change it because if I started to run the stream like an hour or two earlier, I wouldn't even have time to put the news together most days. I would pretty much just go straight into being live on air and wouldn't even be able to figure out what's going on each day. But still, thank you so much for the Cockney, enjoying the Cockney accent. And let me go pull up that thing again real quick, Matthew, so that way we can go and make fun of it again. Oh, here we go. Oh, hello there.
Oh, hello there. Could I have a plum? Can I have a plum from the floor?
Oh, hello there. Do you know when the telly runs?
Hello there. Could you please flatten up my tail?
Oh, hello there. That's not my tail. But anyway.
What is that?
Oh, you don't want to know. I'm just kidding. It's his tail. But
hey, bruv. You're wilding out here, bruv.
Oh, hello there. I just got out of the pub. Oh, man. Dude, I love how the painting is literally called A Marmot with a Branch of Plums. Like, just the most simple title.
That's crazy, man.
Dude, that's how I titled my thumbnails before I load the Muppets files for the stream. It's like Russian tank blowing up or something like that. It's always like that, but man, I gotta tell you.
The painter's name is Jacopo Lagozzi. That's a very interesting. Oh, look at him.
Hey, hold up.
Hey, bruv. Wait,
hello.
what you killing off it for?
Hold up, I had to check this. Oh my goodness, I'm so lucky I took that off screen. There are literal, like, new cherubs in one of the paintings, so very lucky that we took that off screen. Absolute blessing.
It's unintentional.
Whoa,
it's unintentional.
Romania.
Disgusting,
Whoa.
nasty. Get it off the screen. Also,
man.
shout out to Brant Sturgill, by the way. He just joined our Patreon. I just saw it on my phone.
Oh, hello there. Welcome
Hello
to
there.
Patreon. Oh man, dude, you know, we need to make sure to put out some more photo shoots, but let me go check out a Patreon. And also, thank you for everyone joining. I see that a decent amount of y'all are joining right now, and thank y'all so much for that. It means a lot to us, and of course helps us to keep this channel running. I'm not even kidding. And of course, if y'all want to join, you know, links in the description below. Helps us out a great deal. What can I say? But with that, I gotta thank you so much for enjoying our Cockney accents. And I love that everyone enjoys our little jokes here and there with, like, the marmot and everything. We're never gonna forget the marmot. But still, thank you so much once again for the support. Thank you for getting us down that marmot hole. JD Macco came up with that one. But with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you for the massive support. And I hope I was able to address all three of those points the best I could.
Indeed. And up next, we have a very generous $100 donation from guess who? Longtime channel legend Fly Eagles Fly.
No
and the
way.
Eagles are flying tonight. And he says, Merry Christmas, guys. And also, Merry Christmas to you,
Merry
Fly
Christmas.
Eagles. He says, I can't really watch live anymore, but I do catch it later. And you guys do a great job. And thank you very much.
And thank you so much, Fly Eagles Fly, for the massive amount of support. And also, thank you for being here tonight. We have been wondering where you were, because you used to be on the stream often and talking in the live chat, and then you just kind of like faded away. And we were like, where in the world did he go? And it's good to know that you're still watching, because we're always wondering where viewers are whenever we don't see them on stream and in the live chat when we've seen them for a long time. And I got to thank you so much for being here with us tonight and still watching the channel, although it's not on air, and also throwing in massive support to help us to keep this thing running. It means a lot to us that folks enjoy the channel enough to support it and help it to roll. Because if it wasn't for y'all, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And we always have to thank y'all and let y'all know that y'all are the only way we can keep the channel running. And so thank you so much once again. I hope that addresses that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Hal Rose, who throws in a $33 donation. And thank you, Hal, very much as well for that support. And Hal says, hubris A.T. Nemesis, and it's Greek, he says. I'll take your word for it. He says, pick a question, please, and Happy New Year, LSA, and Slav Ukraine.
And Happy New Year! But still, Slav Ukraine. And thank you so much for the support and throwing in a little Greek phrase, Hal Rose. You little internationalist. I don't know what in the world would I call him? What in the world would I call him for that?
What would you call him? Like a scholar.
A scholarly man, a well-landed man. And thank you so much once again for support, and I will make sure to get a question from the chat thanks to you. And so with that, what do we got?
All right, and also shout out to Marcia Tucker, by the way, also just joined our Patreon. We got a flurry of people coming into the Patreon. They're feasting their eyes on the wonderful photo shoots. I'm telling you, they're loving it. They're loving it.
Man.
But anyways, but moving on to that live chat question, we have one from Neil Parsonage, who says, do you think Ukraine will be able to cross the Dnipro with armor anytime soon?
Most likely not. They'll have to expand their battlefields further south, away from Krnyky and Casualty, and also from Molesky, for them to actually set up any kind of a bridge crossing for these armored vehicles to cross. Outside of that, it would be quite difficult. Or they could try and set up ferry crossings, although, once again, those will probably only be successful around the village of Dachi, considering this is the only area of packed earth that could probably support the weight of a tank in the entire area. So, I hope that does address that question the best I can. And thank you, Fly Eagles Fly, for supporting that live chat. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one is going to go to Marion Deemert, who throws in a $30 donation. And thank you, Marion, as always, for that very generous support. And Marion says, we are not sheep. Slav Ukraine, and Hiram Slava. That's the good thing about the LSA. The LSA are not sheep. Y'all think on your own 2 feet. And that's why you're not susceptible to propaganda like the goofy folks that support Russia. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I got to thank you for the support, Marion Deemert. And I got to agree, y'all aren't sheep. Y'all don't watch the main news channels like Fox and CNN. Y'all don't listen to garbage. And y'all don't listen to people who put in low effort into making their news. I got to thank y'all for always being very knowledgeable and very intelligent viewers. And not only that, night after night these days, a lot of y'all teach me things that I didn't know. And it's always great to know that we have such smart and incredibly talented and intelligent people watching this show. Y'all put me to shame sometimes. And I got to thank y'all for all being here and also helping us keep this channel running, Marion, because you're helping us to make sure that this community stays alive and that this channel continues to stay alive. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Neil Vizanon, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you, Neil, very much for that support. It says, I have never heard of a military accidentally shelling their own cities. And has anything like this happened before? And I heard that Russia so far has lost $6 trillion. And what are your thoughts?
6 trillion? I think that might be a little high. I'll have to go look and see if there's any numbers like that. But let's see. Let's think of some examples where people bomb their own country. One I can think of is the United States. We've ended up bombing ourselves many times, both by accident. Well, it's always by accident. The U.S. Army in World War II, I believe, accidentally ended up bombing some small town in Oklahoma with 50-pound training bombs. Luckily, no one was killed, but the bombs literally fell through the middle of the town. Another time, we ended up dropping a couple of nuclear bombs on ourselves accidentally in the area of the Carolinas, and I think one of those has still been undiscovered to this day, so there's just a nuclear bomb sitting in the ground somewhere out there in the Carolinas near the coast. I think some other instances are, for example, like instances of, well, let's see here. Let me think. I'm trying to think of some examples. I think the Germans ended up bombing one of their own villages in World War II on accident. Let's see here. I'm trying to think. There's a decent amount of instances of friendly fire like that, actually, but usually it's during the middle of a very major war when training is being done quickly and it's being rushed, and then accidents are made. You rarely ever see it in wars like these, and especially from air defense, because that's pretty insane. We rarely ever see friendly fire incidents coming from air defense like that. So I would say that there's not really a lot of instances of that kind of an incident, but there are friendly fire incidents where armed forces end up attacking their own people on accident every once in a while. That has happened. But with that, I hope that does address that well, Neil. And thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Panama Floyd, also another channel legend, and he throws in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Panama, for that support. And he says, Enforcer Matt, if you would, take Kenneth Projak's question about the thermal power plant from the chat, please. And Panama, thank you very much for sponsoring Kenneth's question. And I actually did grab that one earlier. So the question from Kenneth goes to, any news on how bad the damage at the thermal power station is a night ago?
I have not heard any exact damage reports coming out. We do know that apparently it's been knocked off the grid, but we don't know if it's been damaged so much that it will be permanently off of the grid until repairs can be effected. So at the moment, we just know that's off grid, but we don't really know much more beyond that at the moment. So I hope that it gives as good as an answer as we can right now with the information we have. Hopefully we can get some more as time goes by. But with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you so much once again for sponsoring that live chat. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to another longtime channel legend, big-time channel legend, BC Skyman, who throws in a $20 donation, and I don't see a comment, and I'm sure he left a super sticker, but sadly I can't click and find it right now at the top bar. I think it might have gone away, unless it's, yeah, I think it went away, sadly. But BC, thank you very much for throwing in some type of YouTube creature doing something crazy once again. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta thank BC Skyman for being an absolute legend here on this channel. And not only that, he also threw in that super chat, which I'm looking for right now, and I can't find the emoji anywhere. What the hell happened? What the hell is even that? But nevertheless, I know what you did, BC Skyman. I saw it when it happened. I just can't go back to reference it now and make sure. But still, thank you for being a channel legend, BC Skyman. I've seen you throwing in so many interesting chats tonight and throwing in offers for us to shoot different kinds of rifles and to go hunting with you in southern Alabama. I got to thank you for all the kindness that you show. You're one of our most amazing viewers, and old guard of this channel, have been around forever. And not only that, you're helping us to keep this thing rolling. And so thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, by the way, shout out to Maria Poo for joining our Patreon. I just saw another one join, and I'm glad to see it. And welcome to the Patreon. And feast your eyes on those gun review videos, and not the videos, but the photos, because those are some good pictures, I must say so myself. Very nice, about nicely edited. But anyways, moving on to our next Super Chat question. We have one from Ian Frogfish, who puts in a $20 donation. And we thought we got to yours earlier, Ian, and we're now to it. This is Frogfish's Super Chat. He says, you guys have answered so many of my comments and questions from the chat, I feel I should pay it forward, he says. And please take a question that ain't mine from the chat. And hey! Thank you very much.
And thank you so much, Ian Frogfish. One thing that I hate, and it's something that a lot of people complain about, and it's a valid complaint, but there's a good reason why. A lot of people always complain that we can't get to every question that's asked, and I wish so many people could see our statistics at the end of every night, because usually, even now, with the live chat being a little bit slower than it has been historically, we still get on average around 13,000 live chats a night that come through. And that is a lot of them. And when we run a show, we can only answer, I think at the most, like maybe 70 questions a night. So, we hardly get to touch a percentage of all of the chats that are thrown in a single night. But we always try. And, if you're out there and you're thinking, man, they're ignoring me, we're not ignoring you. It's just that the sheer volume of questions and chats that come in every single night, it's very hard to get to everyone. So, just be patient. Eventually, you probably will have a question come up. It's just that we can't get to all of them every night. But beyond that, I'm so glad to know that you've enjoyed us answering your questions, Ian Frogfish. I try my best to try and touch around in the live chat and answer things that folks are saying down there, because the premise of this channel is that while we have to have super chats to support it, I always want people to be able to enjoy this for free and to be able to watch this without ads and without sponsors on the streams, and to ask questions and have them answered without them having to pay. The payment side of things is really just for folks who appreciate the channel and want to support it, because it has to be supported to run. But beyond that, I'm so glad to know, Ian, that we have been able to address so many things that you've thrown in. You've thrown in a lot of interesting stuff, and I thank you for enjoying enough that you found it worthwhile to support the channel and to pay it forward to another viewer and sponsor their live chat. We're going to make sure to grab it. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and the live chat question this time is going to go to the Red Carolinian, who says, is Russia still having an ammunition shortage? And if not, when do you think a shortage will occur?
Russia, from what we understand, is still having a ammunition shortage. It's just that it's not that serious of a shortage. It seems as though they are almost on the cusp of being bone dry for ammo, so they've really lowered their artillery firing rates per day, or ammunition usage rates per day at the moment. So I hope that does address that the best I can, and thank you so much, Ian, for sponsoring that live chat and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to VP the King, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you, good sir, for that support. He says, I've been watching the stream for a little now, and just showing support. And I love the channel and hard work you fellas put in. And thank you, good sir. He's VP the King. Let's go.
Hey, let's get it, baby. And thank you so much for being a viewer, VP the King. And thank you so much for enjoying our channel and supporting it. And thank you for enjoying the work we put in. I try and make sure that their stream is a little different. There are people out there, honestly, there are a lot of people out there that put in like minimal effort in this. Like, they just go pull up stuff on Twitter and they don't like geolocate anything or anything like that, or they just read like reports from Deep State or the British MOD or something like that. We always want to make sure that we put in high effort, and I gotta thank you and just appreciate y'all greatly for enjoying what we do, the efforts we put in to make sure that our news is as accurate as it can be, even showing y'all where this stuff is happening on the front lines. It means a lot to us that folks like you really enjoy the effort that we put in, because it makes it so worthwhile to put in all that work and time to have people enjoy it when we're live. And so thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And also, real quick, I saw Christian Cruz say something pretty funny in the live chat. He said, did you know that WD-40 can reduce the radar signature by 5 to 10%? And the British found that out in the Falklands. And I'll tell you, that I've never heard that, first of all. That's a very interesting fact. But even if it does reduce the radar signature by that much, the smell of WD-40, they're going to smell you coming from a mile away. They're going to know that something is in the air and it's flying their way. And it's not good, because it must be mechanical. It's got grease on it. But anyways, moving on from that one, we have a $20 donation from Teslans. And thank you very much, Teslans, as well, for that support. He said, hi, Enforcer, and have a mini review one day of the legend British commander who stopped the Luftwaffe in the Battle of Britain.
And thank you so much for the support. And I would love to do some small historical tidbits like that. But honestly, I think Mark Felton kind of has that entire category on lockdown on YouTube, because Mark Felton is pulling out like the craziest stuff. And, I'm fine with giving him a shout out. He's got like 3 million subs, so he doesn't need a shout out. But like his stuff is wild. I love watching his videos because he always comes out with something just bizarre. Like I was watching a clip today from him, and he was like, did you know that Hitler may have murdered this guy? And it was like his armaments minister. And I was like, what? No way. And you're like, it's so well researched. It's crazy. I got to give a huge credit to that guy. He does his job really well. That's probably something he'd do. But if y'all want to hear me talk about it, I could try to talk about it as well. But with that, thank you so much once again for support. Maybe we'll give that a shot in the future. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one is from Margaret Hemsley. Throws in a $15 donation, and thank you, Margaret, as well for that support. She says, working tomorrow during the stream. And I must say, I'm sorry to hear that, Margaret. And she said, put this toward the bullet fund, maybe 1 or 2.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, Margaret Hemsley. And thank you for putting that towards the ammo fund. I will be putting that towards munitions, so that way I can bring my friends to go shooting. This is not, like, shooting isn't about shooting yourself for the most part. I did that today just to qualify at 600 yards to say I could. But really, what I love to do with shooting is help to get people into the hobby. I love to do that. It's so fun to watch people experience shooting for the first time and get to learn safety and help them out with it. And usually most of the time people are like, wow, you're so nice with it. You're not like a douchebag. Because everyone, I'm not even kidding, down here in Alabama, everyone who tries to get into guns, their biggest thing is I can't, because everyone acts like I should know everything, and they're also douchebags. Like most people are like that. And I always want to be one of those people who get to help people get into the hobby and be interested in it and make sure that it's fun and they're not being run away from someone rude. And thank you so much for helping me to support my ammo fund, because that's most likely going to be going towards ammunition to help out new folks like our best friends get into shooting a little bit more. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And of course, thank you for helping this channel to keep on running, Margaret. And with that, we are on to the next one. And also, I hope you have a fun time at work, as fun as you can. Work isn't always fun, but most of the time it can be if you work it the right way. And I hate to hear that you won't be on stream tomorrow, but I'm going to drop a bombshell on y'all. We are going to be canceling tomorrow night's stream because it's going to be New Year's Eve. I know it's usually a Sunday fundraiser, but we are going to cancel it. And we are just going to resume normal streaming schedule on Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern time. So with that, I hope that does address that well, and I hope that finally gets everyone an answer that they're looking for. And I want you all to, tell everyone if you're in a Discord group with them or if you're on Twitter, a stream will not be running tomorrow. We are going to be canceling the New Year's Eve stream because we are pretty certain there may not be a lot of people around, and also we want to try and get at least one full day off before Christmas break. And so with that, hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Teslands, who puts in a $12 donation and says, in New Zealand, a range is for golfers, LOL. Keith Park, a Kiwi.
And thank you so much for the support. And also, here in America, that's called a driving range. And then the actual gun ranges are called like a rifle range. And then they call them bays if they're for pistols. And I never got that because they don't look like bays to me. They just look like ranges, short ones. It's like pistol range. That's what I call it. Instead of a pistol bay, you're going to go down there and get into the pod bay doors. But nevertheless, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who make this thing possible. And also, thank you for being one of our New Zealand viewers. And hey, if you ever get the chance, I'm telling you, don't knock it until you try it. Try yourself some rifle shooting. You might enjoy it. It's a fun hobby. It's a very interesting one. And not only that, it's very skill-oriented, at least in my opinion. And also quite fun. Skeet's the most fun, though. Like shotgun clay shooting, funnest kind. But with that, hope that does address that well. Thank you so much once again. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Toxic Bananas. These bananas are not for eating. They're toxic. They put in a $10 donation, and thank you very much for the support. Excuse me. And they said, is there an OSINT site/organization that shows confirmed losses of both sides? And if not, what do you recommend, since Oryx is shutting down soon?
Oh, I didn't know Oryx is shutting down soon. I couldn't tell you, to be honest, because we usually do all of our compiling on our own. Probably some other YouTubers can help you out with that, because, not to throw shade, but a lot of them just, go and gather information from other people instead of doing it themselves. But we rarely ever compile Ukrainian casualty stats on this channel because there's really no good measurement to go off of, because the Russians lie to hell and back about it to the point it's just wildly unrealistic, so we can't take their numbers. And then no one else really publishes any close approximates of their numbers either, loss-wise. So we couldn't tell you anywhere to go for that. But as far as Russian losses go, I think that the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense's reports are decently accurate for what they are. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. Thank you so much for the support. But sadly, I think the question of where would I find information outside of this channel, you probably have to ask other folks, because we usually do all of our work on from scratch. And so with that, hope that does address that well. Thank you once again, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one is going to go to Ed. This is Irish Ed, who throws in a $10 donation. And he says, hey, LSA, Irish Ed from Pennsylvania here. And he says, sorry, no donations for a week or so. Low, $. He said, wife and 2 girls think we are millionaires. Arg. Anyway, or anyhow, I swear I saw a huge Z on your range. And never trust a Ruski.
Huge Z on our range. I'm trying to think about that. I think someone may have brought that up before. I never saw it. So if it was there, interesting. And also, thank you for the support, Irish Ed. And also, man, that's got to be rough. That's going to be rough. But just thank you for supporting the channel nevertheless. It does mean a lot and helps us to keep this thing rolling. And also, let's see, what else? I feel like I'm drawing blanks right now. Can you
drawing blanks? That's what you wish you could do at the gun range. Can I draw a blank? Because they're expensive.
Go fish. But man, can you reread that again?
Yeah. Ed said, he said, sorry, no donations for a week or so. Low $, cash. He said, a wife and 2 girls think we are millionaires. Arg. Anyhow, I swear I saw a huge Z on your range and never trust a Ruski.
Okay, so I think I did cover that fairly well, both points. I just want to make sure, but thank you so
fairly
much.
Well.
Yeah, but thank you so much once again for the support, Irish Ed, and helping the channel to keep running, because your support is always greatly appreciated. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to John Garner, who throws in a 10. And John says, thanks, Matt, and to the chat. And thank you, John, as well, for the specific thanks to me. I appreciate it very much. I do appreciate the thanks. And, oh, man, I'm telling you, I'm getting some respect right here. I'm getting some respect. But thank you very much, John, seriously speaking, for that support. And we will grab a live chat question. And this one goes to Jared Foster, who says, is it any coincidence that Putin wants peace talks just as F-16s from Finland arrive? Slava Ukraine, Finland, and the LSA.
And I think those are actually coming from the Netherlands, but I don't know. I'll have to
that might be the Netherlands flag. You put the flag in here, and I was trying to figure out which flag that was. I think you might be right.
What colors is it?
It's the white with a blue cross on it, sideways.
That would be the Finns.
Oh, it is the Finns. Never mind, I was right.
But I think it's actually the Dutch F-16s that are making it there. I'm not really sure if the Finns have F-16s. Finnish, let me check. Let me double check. Finnish Air Force equipment. Oh, buddy. We don't want to pull up that other one about the swastika. That's a yeah, we're not covering that part of their history. It's a little bit of an odd part, but so they said F-16s?
Let me see. Let's see. Yeah, F-16s.
So from what I can tell, it is the Dutch they're talking about, because the Finns only use FA-18s, and this is what their FA-18s look like. You can see the little Finnish roundel right there.
Oh,
so
roundel. So
going off of that, still, it is great to know that they're finally getting those F-16s from the Netherlands. Just want to make sure we weren't getting any incorrect information on our end. But I would say it's probably not coincidental, because they may be thinking this is about to become a slugfest with the Ukrainians because of the F-16s. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And Tom, you were right. The Dutch did say to prepare for war. We actually covered that on the channel, I think, 2 days ago. So that is absolutely correct. We did report that here too. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support.
And the next one goes to Jason Carpenter, who throws in a 10. It says, thanks for a great show, guys. LSA rules and question from the chat, please. And thank you, Jason.
Hey, thank you so much for the kind words. And we will make sure to get one from the chat. So what do we got, Matthew?
And this one goes to Battler, 1975, who says, have any missile attacks originated from Kaliningrad?
No missile attacks have originated from Kaliningrad. So I hope that answers that well. And thank you so much for sponsoring that live chat. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Vance Hicks, who throws in a 10. And thank you very much, Vance, for that support. He says, Enforcer, the U.S. has approved F-16s to Ukraine. And so far, this hasn't been an air war. And will this make a definitive difference? Or will we tell them that they can't use them across Russian borders?
I think it is going to make a definitive difference. They will not be able to use them across Russian borders, but inside of Ukraine, it's going to be making a very clear difference on the field, I believe, at least in my opinion. But we'll have to see, because Western tanks didn't really have that much of an impact, actually. So we'll have to see if the aircraft do as well. So with that, hope that does address that well. Thank you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, huge shout out to Doug. He throws in a $10 donation, and Doug does not leave a comment. But thank you very much, Doug, for that support. And we don't help it. We appreciate the help very much, because it helps to keep the channel running. While my mind is actually drawing a blank for once, it's actually, going blank, kind of like the Enforcers. I'm drawing a blank. Very expensive to draw a blank. Those are very expensive rounds. But anyways, past the corny jokes, we're moving on to our next super chat, which goes to Sammy J, who puts in a 10 as well, and says...
And thank you so much for the support, Sammy J, and helping this channel to keep running, because it is folks like you who make this thing possible. And so thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to George Tincher, who throws in the 10 and says, hey, baby, come to Butthead.
Hey, baby. Whoa, baby mama.
Whoa.
Whoa, baby mama.
Bobby, that boy ain't right.
But thank you so much for the support, and I will try and check that out sometime, I think. But with that, thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. It is folks like you who make it possible. And with that, we are on to the next one.
In the next one goes to the lady Kara, who throws in a 5. It's a Slava Ukraine, LSA for life.
Slava Ukraini and LSA for life. And thank you so much for being a Lee Spring Army soldier. It is always great to know that folks like you are here helping this channel to keep on running. And not only that, you were actually, crazily enough, the first super chat of the night. And I got to thank you so much for being that first person tonight who threw in some support to help us to keep this thing rolling. Thank you so much once again. And of course, LSA for life. Long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to just Wally, who puts in the 5 and says, hi from Sweden. I start every morning with 2 cups of coffee. And today I finally caught you live. Keep up the good work, and long live the LSA.
2 cups of coffee? Man, try Nitro Cold Brew. It will get you up. I drink like 300 milligrams of that before the show. And what's crazy is that I've gotten so used to that, it hardly even does anything for me anymore. But beyond that, I completely understand what you're going through drinking 2 cups of coffee. And still, thank you for getting up so early to be able to watch the stream. And also being one of those viewers that makes the channel worthwhile. One of those people from around the world who get up very early in the morning to try and catch this thing live. It means a lot to us. And I got to thank you for being here with us tonight. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you once again. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Slava Free Something, who makes a return once again, and they threw in a $5 donation. And it said, I want to thank Russian Air Defense for continuing my fight in Russia in my absence. However, I have a grandfather in that city, and I hope he's okay.
And I thank you for the support, Slava Free Something, and I hope he is all right. But great to have you on air. We haven't seen you in a while, and I hope you've been doing well. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope he is doing well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to CK Bold, who throws in a 5 and says, take a live chat question. And we shall. And thank you very much, CK, for that support. And the live chat question is going to go to AF Kaplan, who says, regarding the Belgorod situation, is it known if North Korea ordnance was involved?
Let's see. I don't think so, because they wouldn't be making air defense missiles. I think they're making like basic artillery shells for like the 152 millimeters and stuff like that. So I think that would have been Russian ammunition failures, not North Korean ones, from what we know at the moment. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a 5 from Not Your Regular News. And that sounds like us. But thank you very much for that support. And seriously, though, they said, I've been around since the beginning, and you two are great. And it is a great band. You two's a great band. They said, it's got me through a really, really tough period of my life. And thank you. And I'm very glad to hear that, by the way. And also, the stream honestly does wonders for us as well. We just don't say it quite often on the stream, but it really does. But thank you very much for the support. I'm glad to hear it.
And I gotta thank you so much for the support, not your regular news, and thank you so much for giving us some kind words tonight. I love to know that we were able to get people through rough times. I've heard many great things like that, and it always brings us a great feeling to know that we're able to run this. A lot of people say that we help them out with their anxiety. A lot of people say that we help them to take the war, get the war news, but also not to be overloaded by it. And it means a lot to us to know that we're able to help folks out doing what we do here on air, and not just the people who we support through the fundraisers to the nonprofits. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the kind words, and thank you for being here since the start. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And Ed threw in another one. This one's a 5. And he says, about my previous post, it was the aerial view of the range where I saw the Z.
Oh, wait a minute. Talladega. Oh, yeah, by the way, the Talladega super speedway is right here. Forgot to mention that. And then the range is down here. Oh, I see it now. I think he's talking about this thing, the sideways little dirt road. This is how the range officers go down there and get their daily amounts of salt. it's from the range. But yeah, that's how that works. By the way, really quickly, we actually got an offer from someone who worked at the CMP to actually do gun reviews here. But if we have to deal with the range officers there like there were today, not all of them were bad. There was actually one guy who was actually pretty nice, at the 100-yard range. I was like, hey, he's pretty cool. But the folks at the 600-yard range, it's like, Jesus, we have to work with these people. We wouldn't be able to film. Like, we would be so restricted on what we would be able to do. It wouldn't even be worthwhile to do anything there. So, I don't know if we're going to take him up on that offer or not anymore. Probably won't, because that would be tough to film in those kinds of conditions. It'd also be tough to keep a good mindset where I'm able to focus and talk, because I'd be so focused on trying to not get in a fight with these range officers that I wouldn't be able to think about what I need to do and what I need to say on video. But with that, hope that does address that well. And also, by the way, when I was coming back, I actually drove by the super speedway, because you take this road right over here. And I gotta tell y'all, this place is kind of run down. Like, I didn't expect it, but like the little guard shacks that they have and everything, Matthew, like the wood's actually like rotting on them. Like, you can visibly see it. I was like, man, NASCAR must be going through some tough times lately, because they're not even able to pay for like basic groundskeeping now.
That is crazy. Also, by the way, I was looking, since you keep bringing it up, I had to go do some research. Looking at the CMP Talladega's reviews, people keep referencing the 600-yard range and how rude the person is at the 600-yard range. And I won't say the guy's name out loud, but they keep referencing a specific individual who's apparently been there a long time. And I think that's the guy you're talking about, and they've never let him go.
Huh, interesting. Yeah, maybe that was the guy I dealt with today. I don't know, because the guy I dealt with today was just exceptionally just unfriendly and rude. And I know a lot of people are like, y'all, you probably
it's literally
still ripping on.
It's
oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh no, you go ahead.
I was about to say it's literally exactly what you're describing. Like people describing it verbatim. There's a couple of months old ones. There's a year ago. There's 2 years ago. There's even a 4-year-old one, and they're describing the exact same guy and the exact same experience.
Man, it's Ian Frogfish said, "Still ripping into range officers, are we, Squiddy?" Yes, like it was something wild, because it's like, I'm at the range. It's like, I paid $22 to go to that range. And when you put that into perspective, $22 to just go walk down to somewhere and then shoot the ammo I paid for, like, that's a decent amount of money to be treated like that, and I'm not a big fan of that at all. So, that's one thing that aggravated me a bit. Listen, like, I don't care if he's friends with someone there. If that guy is that rude that for years people have been complaining about him, he needs to be let go. Because, like, that's got to be a douche of unbelievable proportions. Because my experience wasn't that bad that I'd leave a review. It's bad enough I talked to like tens of thousands of people, though. But beyond that, it's crazy to think that they would have someone around like that who's probably running a lot of people away from the sport. But with that, hope that does address it well. And also, Tom, I would tell the managers or the owner, but sadly, it's a congressional run thing, so the director is like some magic being like the U.S. Postmaster General. He's out there somewhere in the world, but who knows where. But with that, I hope that does address that well, and thank you so much once again for support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one is going to go to Justice Ryan, who throws in a very generous $50 donation. And thank you, good sir, for that support. He says, Enforcer, do you think eventually the only way this war is going to end is a stalemate, which is going to force both sides to the bargaining table eventually, unfortunately? What do you think?
And also, let's see. The only way this war is going to end is stalemate. I feel like that's a chance, but I don't feel like it's a high chance. I still think there's a good opportunity that this is all going to be overcome, and the support will start to go back Ukraine's way. I think they will end up winning back a good amount of the land, but there is a chance of a draw. I just don't think it's that high. Like right now, if I had to proportion percentages, I'd say there's like a 20% chance, well, more so a 30% chance of a draw, a 70% chance that the Ukrainians are able to win back territory. Not all of it, but at least some territory they will be able to win back. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And thank you so much once again for the massive support, Justice Ryan, helping this channel to keep on running and being an old guard as well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one is going to go to, and goodness, hold on just a second. The spreadsheet has gone berserk. Everything's massive for some reason.
Oh, no.
This one goes to Power Ant yet again, who puts in another 20 in the Swedish krona. And thank you, good sir, for that support. He says, let me know if you can make it over to Sweden and are interested with a close-up with a CV-90. I've commanded a CV-90 squadron, and as I served in the Army some 20 years ago. And I'll try to hock you up with some old contacts.
And thank you so much for the huge amount of support, Power Ant, and the neat recommendation. If we ever end up in Sweden, I'm going to make sure to hit you up because I would love to get near a CV-90. I think it's the most beautiful, aesthetic infantry fighting vehicle out there, in my opinion. I would love to see one of those things and maybe get to walk around one or even get in one. That would be super cool. And I thank you so much for that offer. That is really cool. And also, really cool to hear you also served in the CV-90 squad. That is a very cool position to be in right there. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one while Matthew beats the shit out of a dead author. But with that, we are on to the next one.
That guy should stick to writing the poems because he don't know nothing about this.
And
but anyway,
that guy needs to stick to writing about some stuff that could be considered slightly racist. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
Like I said, I've got a lot of problems, and some of them I lived through. But anyways, the next one goes to Tommy Manick, who puts in a $2 donation. And thank you, good sir, for that support. And he did not leave a comment, but Tommy, you're helping to keep us running. So, of course, we appreciate it very, very much. And with that, we're now moving on from our Super Chat questions, and we're moving into our live chat questions. And up first, we have the Morse code decoders of the stream. Tonight we had Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Bernew, Paul Schultz, Kevin J, Rumpelstiltskin, Toxic Bananas, Tightlines also, and David Millsaps. They said the Morse says they be getting the hot dogs because they got that dog in them. Long live the LSA, Slava Ukraine.
That's the sound of money, and y'all got that on the nail. That was the right Morse code message of the night, and I got to congratulate y'all for getting that correct for 675 days of war. Congratulations once again. And with that, we're moving on into our live chats. But due to time constraints, we're going to only be able to answer 3 live chat questions. But we did answer a massive amount of them during the Super Chat segment because so many of them were sponsored. But with that, we are on to the first one.
All we have left is 3, as we entered a ton earlier. And this one goes to Rob Hendrick, who says, thoughts on Ukrainian POWs being forced to fight on the front lines for Russia?
That is a violation of the rules of war. That is a war crime, and the Russians should be held accountable for that if possible. And any Russian commanders of these Ukrainian units should be executed on site. So with that, I hope that does address that well. Kind of a dark way to end it. But with that, we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Damien Ballou, who says an air defense missile is not supposed to be destroyed if its target it's not reached, ? If yes, why they have fallen on the city?
Sometimes they don't destroy in time. Sometimes the missiles may have computational errors where they think they still have some time to try and track down the target, possibly. And then they end up not exploding until they come in contact with the ground. That's actually a lot more common than people think, from what we've seen on video evidence, for the missiles to explode on impact with the ground rather than self-destruct in air. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least based off of the video that we've seen throughout the war, the videos we've seen through the war. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person to throw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Timmy Knock, who says, in your guys' opinion, is Putin trying to take back all the USSR states and eventually European land?
Actually, yes, that would be correct. And I think he's also trying to take back parts of the former Russian Empire, because in his plans for expansion, he actually says he wants to take parts of Poland. And the Soviet Union never controlled parts of Poland. They only controlled Poland as a part of the Russian Empire, because Poland was actually split up in between Germany and Russia during that time in history, around the 19th and 17th centuries. So going off of that, I think he's actually trying to restore the Russian Empire's landmass and also bring all of that back under its control. And that means that eventually Finland would be on that chopping block as well, but now they're in NATO along with the Baltics and Poland, meaning that there isn't really a lot out there for the Russians to try and get to reform the empire unless they wanted to go and fight NATO. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and we have reached the end of tonight's stream. I've got to say, it's been an absolute treasure and a wonder to know that we've been able to run the stream for every single one of y'all tonight. There's been so many of y'all who've gotten on, and of course, we are honored to run this for each and every single one of y'all and to make sure to get the news out to y'all. If y'all enjoyed tonight, make sure to hit the like button. If you really enjoyed, make sure to subscribe. If you really, really enjoyed it and you want to support the channel, and you can always go and check out our Patreon, link in the description below.
Hey!
But nevertheless, thank you all so much once again for watching. We will see you all on Tuesday, because we're not running a stream tomorrow. So I want everyone to make sure to get that, because we said it a little bit later in the stream. So I'm sure a lot of people will still not have gotten the memo, sadly, really on our end, our fault. But we will not be running a stream tomorrow. There will be no Sunday fundraiser this week. We'll be running one next Sunday, and I hope all of y'all are there for that. And so with that, good night, good luck, stay safe. Take care. We'll see you all Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. I will see you all then. And of course, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die.
And good night, folks. We'll see you all on Tuesday. And in fact, we'll see you next year. And of course, Slava Ukraine, Herom Slava, and good night.
Yes.
The Lee Spring Army sends its regards.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.
Пану